My name is Amna and I am 32 years old. I had just swallowed my pride at my mom's birthday lunch when my sister leaned across the table, smiled like a blade, and said I'd die alone. The room went quiet, except for my mother's approving hum and the clink of cutlery like a judge's gavel. They'd erased my husband from family history, buried my twins under rumors, and spent years making me beg for crumbs. What none of them knew was that my father left something in my name, something powerful, locked behind paperwork and silence. I stood up shaking, and the restaurant doors opened. Before I continue, tell me your country and the time right now. My name is Amna, and I am 32 years old. I had promised myself I would never step into a room with my family again, not after what they did, but my mother's birthday felt like a trap I couldn't avoid. There I was, sitting at a long, shining table at Riyadh's finest restaurant, pretending not to notice that every chair around me cost more than I earned in a month. The chandeliers glimmered above us like frozen laughter, the kind of luxury meant to make people forget the rot underneath. My mother sat at the head of the table, her posture sharp enough to draw blood, pearls layered over a cream dress that whispered power. My sister Sarah was beside her, beautiful, poised, venomous. The rest of the family, an audience disguised as relatives, pretended this was a celebration. I knew better. My mother didn't invite me to celebrate, she invited me to prove something. And I walked right into it. I'd spent the morning rehearsing what I'd say if things turned ugly. I thought I was prepared. But nothing could have braced me for the quiet violence that fell out of my sister's mouth that afternoon. She leaned forward, her lips barely parting, and said, "You'll die alone, Amna." Just like that. No warning. No build-up. Just a statement of death disguised as pity. The words didn't echo, they hung there, suspended between us like a blade. The air shifted. Forks stopped mid-air. Even the waiter froze. I laughed, at first softly, then hollowly. "Excuse me?" Sarah smiled sweetly, the way only cruel people can. "You heard me." She tilted her head, pretending to care. "You've been miserable for years, Amna. Everyone can see it. It's time you faced reality. You pushed your husband away. You chose isolation. Maybe it's time you accept that you're the problem." My chest tightened. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My hands trembled under the table, where I gripped the napkin so tightly it tore. "Enough, Sarah," my mother said mildly, without looking up from her wine glass. Her tone wasn't protection, it was ceremony. Like she had to say it for appearances. Sarah chuckled, glancing around the table. "I'm just being honest, Mother. She always claimed she didn't need us. Well, now she doesn't even have him. I mean," she smirked. "Does anyone even know where her husband is these days?" The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to slice through bone. I could feel their eyes crawling over me, cousins, uncles, wives of distant relatives. Every single one of them had heard a version of my story. And none of them had ever heard mine. I took a slow breath. "He's fine." Sarah's eyes glimmered. "Fine," she echoed. "Funny. Fine people don't vanish for 2 years and leave their wives living in rented apartments." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. My husband hadn't vanished. He'd been forced away. But they didn't know that, or maybe they did, and this was their punishment for me choosing him over them. My mother finally looked up. "Sarah," she said again, quieter this time. "That's enough." But she didn't look at me. Not once. So I asked her, "You're really going to let her talk to me like this?" Her expression barely flickered. "She's your sister. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." That was her favorite phrase. It was what she said when Sarah spread lies about me. What she said when my father died and they refused to let me handle the funeral arrangements. What she said when I begged her to tell me the truth about the missing inheritance papers. Always the same, don't make a scene. Translation, don't expose us. I exhaled shakily. I didn't come here to fight. Sarah leaned back, satisfied. Then why did you come? To remind us you exist? Laughter again, nervous this time. Even the waiter tried to retreat discreetly, but my mother waved him off. The restaurant's soft music played on, cruelly unaware that my life was unraveling in front of imported cutlery. You've all moved on, I said, my voice quieter, steadier than I felt. You've told everyone I'm alone, that my marriage was a mistake. Fine. If that helps you sleep at night. Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes. It helps, actually. Something in me snapped, years of swallowed pride, nights of crying into silence, the loneliness of knowing your own blood prays for your failure. I pushed back my chair, my palms flat against the linen. The glasses rattled. You think I have nothing left, I said, my voice trembling. But maybe you've forgotten who I am. Sarah laughed. A nobody? A wife abandoned and discarded? I leaned closer, lowering my tone to something dangerous. A daughter you underestimated. Her laughter died. For the first time, a flicker of confusion passed through her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could answer, the restaurant doors opened behind me, loud, ungraceful, commanding. Heads turned. Waiters froze mid-step. I didn't move at first, I couldn't. Something in my body recognized the moment before my mind caught up. A tall silhouette stood framed by daylight, broad-shouldered, familiar. And beside him, two smaller figures clung to his hands. I turned, heart slamming against my ribs. It was him. My husband. And our twins. For a second, my mind refused to believe it. He was supposed to be hundreds of miles away, unreachable. For 2 years I'd lived with the ache of unanswered questions, his silence, the letters that stopped, the whispers that he'd left me. But there he was. Alive. Present. And walking straight toward me. Sarah's fork slipped from her fingers. My mother's face drained of color. A murmur rippled across the table like a wave of disbelief. He walked with quiet authority, black suit, trimmed beard, that same calm intensity that had once made me fall for him. The twins, Zayn and Layla, now 6, wore matching white shirts and shy smiles. They didn't look uncertain, they looked proud. Like they knew exactly what their presence meant. I was frozen. My heart wanted to run to him, but my mind whispered wait. Nothing about this was simple. He stopped at the head of the table, directly across from my mother. Happy birthday, Mother, he said smoothly, his tone polite but razor-edged. It's been a while. My mother blinked, speechless. Her throat bobbed as she forced a smile. You shouldn't have come uninvited. I didn't. His gaze slid toward me, steady and warm. Amna invited me. I hadn't. Not in words, anyway. But I realized what he meant. My silence these past years had been his invitation. The moment I stopped running from my family, he knew it was time to return. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the marble floor. What is this? Some pathetic stunt? He turned to her, eyes cool. No stunt. Just a man and his family attending a birthday lunch. Sarah's mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't used to being silenced. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, thick, sealed with a gold emblem I knew too well. My father's seal. The one that used to mark his personal documents. The one that had vanished after his death. He set it gently on the table between the champagne flutes. The sound was small, but it thundered through me. I believe, he said evenly, this belongs to my wife. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Where did you get that? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to me. Amna, you should read it. I stared at the envelope as if it were alive. My father's handwriting, slanted, deliberate, spelled my name across the front, for Amna. To be delivered in person. My throat tightened. I don't understand. Sarah snatched for it, but my husband's hand moved faster, catching her wrist mid-air. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Don't, he said quietly. You've taken enough that doesn't belong to you. Sarah's face flushed red, half anger, half humiliation. Who do you think you are? He released her wrist gently, as if disgusted by the contact. The man your father trusted when he realized what you were all capable of. The room went utterly silent. Even the waiters retreated, sensing something sacred, or dangerous, unfolding. My mother stood, trembling slightly. You have no right to speak about my husband that way. He met her gaze without blinking. I'm not speaking about him. I'm speaking for him. She faltered. I reached for the envelope, my fingers trembling. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried not just paper, but years of buried truth. My name on it looked like a ghost had signed it. Amna, my mother said, her tone suddenly soft, desperate. Whatever this is, don't open it here. It's private. Private? I repeated. You mean secret? Sarah scoffed. Oh, please. Probably another of his sentimental letters. You always were his favorite project. My eyes lifted to hers. Funny, I said quietly, he never trusted you with anything sealed. Her jaw tightened. My husband leaned closer to me. Open it. But I couldn't, not yet. My hands were shaking too badly. The moment felt too big, too final. Whatever was inside would change everything. My mother's voice cracked through the tension. You're making a fool of yourself, Amna. Do you really think your father left anything for you after what you did? What I did? I asked, disbelief dripping from every word. You mean after I married someone you couldn't control? After I stopped pretending to worship your approval? Her eyes hardened. After you destroyed this family's reputation. My husband let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Your family's reputation destroyed itself, madam. You just blamed the only honest person in the room. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. Enough. You don't belong here. He didn't even look at her. Neither do you. The table fractured into chaos, voices rising, forks clattering, my mother trying to maintain dignity while panic seeped through her perfect composure. I sat there, envelope in hand, watching the power I'd been denied all my life shift toward me, slowly, silently, irreversibly. For years, they'd told me I was nothing. For years, they'd said I was weak, foolish, forgotten. But the way my mother looked at that envelope, terrified, pleading, told me the truth. They had built their empire on lies, and my name was the crack that could bring it down. I stood up, the envelope pressed to my chest. You wanted me to die alone? I said softly, staring straight at Sarah. Then you shouldn't have brought witnesses. Her lip quivered. You don't know what you're doing. I smiled for the first time that day. Oh, I think I do. I turned toward my husband. His eyes met mine, calm but burning with something fierce and unspoken. The twins smiled shyly, clutching their gift bags, oblivious to the war they'd just walked into. He reached for my hand, steady and certain. It's time, he whispered. And for the first time in years, I believed him. I looked one last time at my mother, her face pale, her pearls trembling against her throat, and then down at the envelope with my father's seal, glowing faintly under the golden light. Whatever was inside it would shatter the illusion that kept them powerful. Whatever was inside it had been waiting for me. And as I slipped it into my purse, the last thing I saw was Sarah's reflection in the restaurant mirror, her smile gone, her eyes cold and terrified. For the first time in my life, she was the one who looked afraid. The envelope burned against my skin like a promise, and I couldn't help but wonder, what did my father know that could still scare them after all these years? The restaurant had never been this silent. Even the sound of air conditioning felt loud as my husband's voice settled into the stillness. Happy birthday, Mother, he said again, calm but unyielding, like someone reclaiming stolen ground. For 2 years, I had lived in exile. 2 years of whispered shame, of rumors that he'd left, of my mother's pity packaged as scorn. 2 years of explaining to my children why we didn't visit their grandmother anymore. And now he stood there, not like a ghost returned from the past, but like a man who'd come to settle unfinished business. Sarah broke first. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "You don't belong." He cut her off with a look that froze her mid-sentence. "I belong wherever my wife is disrespected," he said quietly. "And from what I just heard, that happens often." The silence that followed was thick, electric. My mother's painted smile twitched. "There's no need for dramatics," she murmured. "This is a family gathering, not a trial," he interrupted gently. "Then why does it feel like one?" The twins stood close beside him, their small hands gripping his. They didn't understand the politics of humiliation. They just saw a room full of adults who'd erased their mother, and now stared at her like she'd resurrected from the dead. I swallowed hard and rose slowly, the chair's legs scraping against the marble floor like a declaration. "You shouldn't have come," I whispered. He looked at me, eyes soft but steady. "I promised you I would when it was time." Sarah snorted. "Oh, that's adorable. The prodigal husband returns. What are you here for, a sympathy parade?" He didn't even glance her way. "I'm here for the truth." Something flickered across her expression, panic, quickly disguised as contempt. She turned to my mother for support, but my mother looked pale, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. "What truth?" she demanded. "The one buried under years of lies," my husband said simply. "The one your late husband wanted your daughter to have." The words landed like an earthquake beneath the table. My mother's hand trembled. "You have no idea what you're talking about." He smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you'll explain why your husband's lawyer delivered this to me." He slid the envelope closer to her. The gold seal of my father's estate shimmered faintly under the chandelier's light. I felt my heart lurch. Sarah's chair screeched again as she lunged forward. "You can't just..." My husband didn't move, but his tone cut clean through the air. "Sit down, Sarah." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. There was something in his calm that commanded obedience. Even she hesitated before glaring at me as if I were the reason he existed. My mother straightened her posture, summoning the dignity she wore like armor. "If you've come here to start trouble..." "I've come here to end it," he interrupted. "You've all made my wife feel like a stranger in her own bloodline. You've stolen her peace, her name, her confidence. You told everyone she was abandoned. But the truth is, she was exiled." The words hit harder than I expected. Exiled. That was what it felt like. Banished for loving wrong, for defying hierarchy, for being inconvenient to the story my mother wanted the world to believe. Sarah laughed, but it cracked at the edges. "Oh please. Exiled? What are you, some royal family?" He looked at her, just looked, and her laughter died mid-breath. "Families don't have to wear crowns to commit treason," he said quietly. My pulse hammered in my throat. For years, I had dreamt of someone saying those words for me, but hearing them now, in front of everyone, felt both vindicating and terrifying. My mother tried to pivot. "Amna, tell him to leave. You know this isn't the place for..." "This is exactly the place," I said, surprising myself. My voice was shaking but strong. "Because this is where it all began. The pretending. The lies. The silence." Her eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to side with him. Maybe she thought my fear was still loyal to her. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the daughter begging for acceptance anymore. I was the woman who'd survived being erased. Sarah leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Oh, don't play the victim, Amna. You left. You walked away." "I walked away because you poisoned everything I loved," I said. "You made sure I had no place here unless I crawled." "Stop it," my mother snapped, slamming her palm on the table. The glasses rattled. "You will not speak to your sister like that." I turned to her slowly. "Like what, mother? Honestly?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. My husband slid the envelope toward me. "Open it," he said softly. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. The wax seal gleamed with my father's initials, HM, and the faint imprint of the family crest he used on private documents. I hesitated. Sarah smirked. "Go on. Let's see what fantasy you two have cooked up." I looked at her. "You really want to see what he left behind?" "Please," she scoffed. "If there was anything worth having, I'd already know about it." I tore open the seal. The paper inside was thick, aged, and handwritten. The familiar slope of my father's penmanship made my chest ache. "My dearest Amna. If you are reading this, it means I have failed to protect what was rightfully yours." I froze. My breath caught. My mother made a sound, half gasp, half plea. "And I can only pray that time has given you the strength to face the truth about those who kept you in the dark." I looked up. My mother's eyes darted away. Sarah's face had gone pale. My husband spoke gently. "Keep reading. This letter is attached to a set of legal documents you were meant to receive upon my passing. They were withheld. Whether by ignorance or design, I cannot say. But I left provisions to ensure they found you eventually. I trust the bearer of this letter to fulfill that task." Sarah shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. This is fake." "Sit down," my husband said again, quiet but lethal. She stayed standing, breathing fast. "You think you can just walk in here, wave a letter around, and what?" I cut in. "Expose you?" Her eyes flashed. "You're pathetic. You're clinging to scraps." "Maybe," I said, folding the letter carefully, "but they're mine." My mother's voice trembled. "You don't know what you're doing. That letter will only bring pain." "Pain?" I said softly. "You mean truth?" Her face crumpled for a second before she rebuilt it into stone. "Your father was confused before he died. He didn't understand." "He understood perfectly," my husband interrupted. "He knew what was being done behind his back." Sarah glared at him. "You don't know anything about this family." "Oh, I know plenty," he said, his voice darkening. "I know about the offshore account your mother used to transfer estate funds before probate closed. I know about the trustee revisions that conveniently erased Amna's name from the inheritance clause. And I know you've both been terrified this day would come." The table erupted into gasps. My aunt covered her mouth. My uncle muttered a curse. My mother stood abruptly, her composure cracking. "You are accusing me of theft?" "I'm accusing you of betrayal," he said. "Your husband's last act of faith was to protect your daughter. You turned that into leverage." Sarah grabbed her purse. "I'm done with this nonsense. Enjoy your circus." But just as she stepped away, the twins moved closer to me. Layla, my daughter, looked up at Sarah with wide eyes. "Auntie Sarah," she said softly, "why are you scared?" Sarah froze. The question sliced through the tension like a whisper of judgment. "I'm not scared," she snapped, too quickly. Zane frowned. "Then why are you shaking?" The table went dead silent. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Sarah's hands visibly trembled as she clutched her bag tighter. "Out of the mouths of babes," my husband murmured. Sarah turned to me, eyes burning. "You think this is over? You think one letter changes anything?" I stood slowly. "No," I said, folding the document neatly back into the envelope. "But it's a start." My mother reached for my hand across the table, her touch cold and desperate. "Amna, please. You don't know the whole story." I looked her in the eye. "Then tell me. Now." Her hand fell away. "Not here." "Then when?" I demanded. "You've had years." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her silence was confession enough. My husband rested a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We'll leave you to your celebration," he said quietly. You might want to spend it rewriting your lies. We turned to go. The twins followed, their small footsteps echoing in the hollow quiet. Just as I reached the door, Sarah's voice came, low and trembling, not with sadness, but fury. You have no idea what you've just started. I looked back. You have no idea what my father already finished. Her eyes flicked toward the envelope like it was ticking. And for the first time, she looked worried. Outside, the afternoon sun hit my face like absolution. The twins ran ahead to the car, laughing, unaware of the storm we'd just unleashed. My husband held the door open for me. What now? He asked softly. I glanced down at the envelope in my hand. The gold seal glinted faintly, like an eye watching from the past. I think, I said, we let them destroy themselves. As we drove away, I looked back through the rearview mirror. Through the restaurant's glass window, I saw Sarah standing beside my mother, both of them frozen, staring at the empty chair I'd finally stopped apologizing for occupying. And in that moment, I realized something terrifyingly beautiful. The family that had erased me now had to remember me, because my name was the one they'd tried hardest to bury. But my father's signature had brought me back from the dead. And somewhere deep in that envelope, I could feel it, the next war waiting to be read. If the letter was only the beginning, what else had my father hidden, and why had my family fought so hard to keep it from me? The drive home was a blur. I held the envelope against my chest the entire time, as if someone might reach through the glass and snatch it away. My husband didn't speak, and I didn't ask him to. Silence was the only language that made sense after what just happened. The twins had fallen asleep in the back seat, their heads resting on each other's shoulders, blissfully unaware that their mother's world had just cracked open. I watched their reflections in the rearview mirror and felt something twist inside me, a fragile mix of fear and hope. When we reached our house, I stepped out into the dimming light. The air smelled like rain, heavy and waiting. My husband followed me inside, carrying the envelope with the same careful reverence one gives to evidence. He placed it on the coffee table. The gold seal glimmered faintly under the lamp. For a long time, neither of us moved. Finally, I said, "How did you find it?" He hesitated before answering. "I didn't. It found me." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, voice low. 3 weeks ago, a man came to my office. Said he was from your father's law firm. Asked if I was still married to you. When I said yes, he smiled, like he already knew, and handed me that envelope. He said, "Tell her it's time." Then he walked away. My skin prickled. "You didn't open it?" "Not until today," he said. Because the letter inside said it had to be delivered in person, in front of witnesses. He paused. "Your family was always the witnesses, Amna." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air charged with unspoken meaning. My family. The same people who had lied, erased, and humiliated me. The ones who swore my father left me nothing. I sat down slowly, staring at the seal again. It doesn't make sense. My father died almost 8 years ago. If there was something left for me, why now? Because someone delayed it, he said simply. Your father's lawyer said the trust was under review. That someone contested it years ago, and only now has the court allowed its reopening. My pulse quickened. Contested? By who? He looked at me, and the silence was answer enough. Of course. Sarah. I took a deep breath and carefully unfolded the papers inside the envelope. The first page was the letter I'd already read in the restaurant, but behind it were more documents. Dozens of them. Typed, notarized, signed in blue ink. At the top of one, in bold letters, Supplementary Trust Directive, Amna Hassan. My heart stumbled. My father had left something. Something only I was meant to receive. But as I read the clauses, the room began to spin. In the event of interference by any immediate family member in the disbursement of this trust, or falsification of Amna Hassan's marital or parental status, the estate shall transfer full fiduciary control to the designated successor. Attorney of record, Mr. Idris Kamar. I looked up. Who's Idris Kamar? My husband frowned. Never heard the name before. But it says he's the executor. The next page had a seal from the Ministry of Finance dated 2 years after my father's death. Someone had refiled these documents. Someone had kept them alive. I ran my fingers over the inked signatures, trembling. This changes everything. Maybe that's why your sister panicked, he said quietly. She knew. The words sliced through me. Sarah had known. She had known for years and said nothing. All those dinners where she pitied me, all those birthdays she ignored me, it wasn't indifference. It was strategy. Why would she hide it? I whispered. He met my eyes. Because it meant losing control. The clock ticked loudly. My husband opened a bottle of water, took a sip, then asked, "Do you trust the lawyer? The one who gave this to me?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But I have to find out." He nodded. "Then we'll find him." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A deep, steady voice came through. "Mrs. Hassan?" "Yes." "Who is this?" "This is Idris Kamar. I believe you've just received your father's documents." I froze. "How did you?" "I have confirmation from my courier," he interrupted smoothly. "I'd been instructed to wait until your husband made contact." "I understand the envelope was opened in public?" My breath hitched. "How do you know that?" "Because your sister called me an hour ago," he said. "And she's furious." I stood up, my pulse thudding. "She knows about you?" "She's been trying to remove me as executor for months," he said, his voice calm but edged. "She claims you're unfit." I laughed, an empty, bitter sound. "Of course she does. I'd advise you to come to my office tomorrow," he continued. "There are things you need to see, records that were sealed by your mother's legal counsel." "My mother?" I whispered. "She was involved too?" "I'm afraid so." When I hung up, my husband was watching me closely. "What did he say?" "That my mother's name is on the paperwork." He sighed, rubbing his jaw. "Then this isn't about money anymore." I sank back into the couch, feeling the weight of it all. "It's about control." We sat in silence for a while. The rain finally began to fall outside, gentle but relentless. The sound filled the room like an old memory. I thought of my father, his quiet strength, the way he used to touch my shoulder when he wanted me to know I'd done well. He'd always said, "Truth doesn't die, Amna. It just waits for courage." Maybe this was what he meant. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face, how her confidence had cracked in that restaurant, how my mother's pearls had trembled against her throat. Around 2 a.m., I got up and walked to the living room. The envelope was still on the table, its edges damp from my earlier tears. I reached for it again and noticed something I hadn't before, a second, smaller note folded inside the last page. My heart stuttered as I unfolded it. "If anything happens to this trust, look for the property registered under the initials HR. You'll understand why when you see it. HR." The letters pulsed in my mind like a code. I rushed back to the main documents, scanning every line until I found it, HR Holdings, private residence, damn 'em. My father had hidden something under a business name. Maybe property. Maybe proof. But the next line chilled me. Beneficiary, provisional Sarah Hassan. I felt my throat tighten. "No," I whispered. "No, that can't be right." My husband, now awake from the noise, walked in, eyes heavy with sleep. "What's wrong?" I handed him the note silently. He read it, his expression darkening with every word. "She's already claimed it," he muttered. "The property. She must have used her mother's signature." My knees went weak. "That's why she panicked at the restaurant." She thought this would expose her. And it will, he said firmly. Tomorrow. The next morning, we drove to Kumar and Associates, a gray building tucked between glass towers downtown. The receptionist led us into an office that smelled faintly of old books and rain. A tall man in his 50s stood by the window, sharp suit, silver hair, eyes that seemed to measure everything. He turned as we entered. "Mrs. Hassan," he greeted. "Mr. Hassan. I've been expecting you." He gestured toward a stack of files on his desk. "Your father's estate was unusual. He created conditions most families would find impossible." I frowned. "What kind of conditions?" He opened a file, showing me a photocopy of my father's signature beside typed lines of legal text. "He built a trust of accountability. It means if any family member violated its ethical clause, by deception, coercion, or falsifying records, the trust would automatically redirect to you." I blinked. "Redirect to me?" "Yes," he said simply. "Your father believed you were the only one he could trust." My throat closed up. "But then why didn't I get it sooner?" He sighed. "Because your mother filed a petition the week after his death, claiming you were emotionally unstable and unfit to handle financial matters. The court never approved it, but it delayed everything." My husband clenched his fists. "They did this on purpose." The lawyer nodded slowly. "Your sister signed an affidavit backing your mother's claim." I sat in stunned silence. My family hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, they'd tried to legally erase me. Mr. Kumar continued, "Now that the restriction has lifted, you can reclaim everything. But there's a problem." "Of course there is," I muttered bitterly. "What now?" He slid a new document across the table. "Your sister has already filed a counterclaim, asserting you're estranged and therefore disqualified." I stared at the paper, unable to breathe. "Disqualified from my own father's inheritance?" He nodded grimly. "She's also alleging fraud, saying your marriage is invalid." My husband's jaw tightened. "On what grounds?" Mr. Kumar hesitated. "She claims there was never a legal certificate filed after your relocation abroad. And she's provided witnesses." My hands trembled. "Witnesses? Who?" He looked me straight in the eyes. "Your mother." The room tilted. The air left my lungs like a punch. "No," I whispered. "She wouldn't." "She already has," he said gently. "The court hearing is scheduled for next week." I sat frozen, staring at the paper spread before me like shards of my past. My husband placed his hand over mine, grounding me. "They think I'm weak," I said, voice breaking. "They think I'll crumble again." "Then prove them wrong," he said softly. I nodded, swallowing hard. The fear inside me began to harden into something sharper. I turned back to Mr. Kumar. "What happens if I fight it?" He studied me for a moment. "If you win, Mrs. Hassan, you don't just inherit the trust. You inherit control." "And if I lose?" He leaned back, his gaze steady. "Then your sister inherits everything. And your children's names are struck from the will." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at the envelope one last time, the thing that started all this, and felt its weight anew. They thought they'd buried me. But my father had left me a weapon disguised as a secret. And now, for the first time in years, I was ready to use it. My sister's betrayal was no longer just personal, it was legal. And the next battleground wasn't a family table. It was a courtroom. The next morning began like a nightmare pretending to be normal. Rain against the windows. The faint sound of my twins fighting over a cereal box. My husband standing in the kitchen, staring at the coffee machine as if caffeine could fix betrayal. I sat at the dining table with a folder of documents that didn't belong in any ordinary life, legal drafts, signatures, scanned affidavits. Each one a piece of evidence that my family had written me out of my own bloodline. For years, I'd told myself the silence after my father's death was grief. But now I knew, it was theft. My husband slid a cup toward me. You didn't sleep. I shook my head. I couldn't. You kept rereading that line, he said gently, the one about the conditions of betrayal. I looked down at the papers. It's just surreal. My father predicted this. He knew they'd do something like this. He sat across from me, his eyes tired but fierce. He knew your mother. He knew Sarah. I laughed softly, without humor. He also knew me. He knew I wouldn't fight back until it was almost too late. He reached over, touching my hand. Not this time. At 10 sharp, the phone rang. It was Mr. Idris Kamar. His voice was clipped, professional. Mrs. Hassan, there's been movement on your case. The court accepted your sister's counterclaim faster than expected. They've scheduled the first procedural hearing for next Monday. I swallowed hard. That's only 5 days. Yes, he said. Your sister's lawyer is pushing for an expedited process. They're arguing the trust's assets are being mismanaged in limbo. Mismanaged? I repeated. It's frozen. That's their narrative, he said grimly. We'll dismantle it. But you need to prepare for character attacks. They'll question your marriage, your mental health, even your parenting. I went cold. Parenting? They're alleging instability, he confirmed. They'll claim your husband's absence was abandonment. That you suffered emotional breakdowns. I closed my eyes. All because I stopped speaking to them. That's how manipulation works, he said. They twist silence into confession. When I hung up, my husband looked at me. What did he say? I couldn't bring myself to repeat the words. Instead, I slid the phone across the table. They're coming for everything. He read the message thread quietly, then exhaled through his nose. Then we'll come harder. His certainty steadied me, but the ache in my chest wouldn't ease. I looked at the clock. Every minute from now until Monday would be a countdown to war. That afternoon, I drove alone to my father's grave. The sky was overcast, heavy and gray. His tombstone was simple, just his name, his dates, and one short line. Integrity leaves no heirs, it leaves witnesses. I knelt beside it, brushing away the damp leaves. My voice came out small. You were right, Baba. They're trying to erase me. The rain began to fall harder, tiny cold drops mixing with my tears. I thought silence would keep the peace. But all it did was give them power. You must have known that, didn't you? That's why you hid everything this way. I took out the copy of his letter from my bag, tracing the ink where he wrote betrayal conditions. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I already knew. My family didn't just lie, they forged, manipulated, and weaponized love until it became currency. For years, I thought my father's silence after arguments with my mother was weakness. Now I realized it was protection. He had stopped trusting her long before he stopped breathing. That evening, the doorbell rang. My husband answered, and I heard voices, low, tense, familiar. I stepped into the hall and froze. It was my mother. She stood there in a long black coat, her umbrella dripping water onto the rug. Her eyes scanned the room like she was inspecting property. When her gaze landed on me, she smiled, a brittle thing. Amna, she said softly. May I come in? My husband blocked the doorway. Why? I just want to talk to my daughter, she said, her tone sickly sweet. She doesn't need more poison, he replied. Her smile faltered. How dare you? I stepped forward. It's fine, I said. Let her in. He shot me a warning look, but I shook my head. I needed to hear what she came to say. She stepped inside, her perfume filling the hallway, a scent from my childhood that used to mean comfort and now smelled like deceit. She sat down on the couch like it was still her house. I heard you're seeing that lawyer, she began. I am. Idris is a manipulator, she said quickly. He's using you to stir up old pain. Old pain? I echoed. You mean the pain of being lied to? Her nostrils flared. You're making this ugly, Amna. It already is, I said quietly. She sighed, her voice dropping into the tone she used when she wanted to sound fragile. You don't understand. After your father died, there were debts, complications. We had to make decisions quickly. I did what was best for the family. The family? I repeated. Or for Sarah? She's the one who stayed, she snapped. She helped me. You left. I left because you turned his funeral into a business meeting. Her eyes flashed. You're ungrateful. No, I said, leaning forward. I'm awake. My husband re-entered the room, standing beside me. My mother glanced at him with contempt. Do you really think he'll save you? She sneered. He's the reason you lost everything. That's not true, I said immediately. She laughed coldly. He dragged you down with his failures. He ruined your reputation, and now you're clinging to him like he's redemption. My husband didn't react. He simply looked at her, calm but razor-edged. You sound threatened. She turned on him. I sound right. No, I said sharply. You sound scared. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For a heartbeat, I saw it, the crack in her confidence. You and Sarah have something to hide, I said. And my father's documents will expose it. She stood abruptly. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then explain it, I challenged. Explain the offshore accounts. The forged affidavits. The trust that was supposed to reach me 8 years ago. Her jaw clenched. Those records mean nothing. Then why are you here? The question hung in the air. Her eyes softened suddenly, and her voice dropped. Because I'm your mother, and I don't want you to make this mistake. Which mistake? I asked. Fighting back? Destroying your family. I smiled bitterly. You already did that. She flinched like I'd struck her. Then she straightened, smoothing her coat. If you go to court, she said quietly, you'll regret it. There are things about your father you don't know. Things that could ruin your memory of him. I met her gaze. If that's true, you'd have told me years ago. For the first time, her eyes wavered. And in that hesitation, I saw guilt, not grief. My husband stepped forward. You should leave. She turned to me one last time. You think you've won something, she whispered. But when the court hears what we have, you'll wish you'd stayed silent. Then she walked out, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the house. I sat down slowly, my knees weak. My husband crouched beside me. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure. She's lying. She has to be. He squeezed my hand. Then we prove it. I stared at the closed door, my mother's words still echoing in my head. There are things about your father you don't know. I wanted to dismiss it as another manipulation, but something inside me stirred, a flicker of fear that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't bluffing. What if my father's silence wasn't only about them? What if it was also about something he didn't want me to see? That night, I called Mr. Kumar again. I need to see everything, I told him. Every record. Every amendment. Every note my father ever wrote. He hesitated. Mrs. Hassan, some of it might be difficult to read. I don't care, I said. I'm done being protected. There was a pause. Then he said, very well. I'll have the files ready by morning. When I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. My husband had gone to bed, the twins were asleep, and the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets glistened under the streetlights, wet and reflective. I caught my own reflection in the window, eyes tired but alive. For the first time in years, I didn't see a woman beaten down by family shame. I saw a woman gathering her weapons. I whispered to the night, you wanted me quiet. You taught me silence. Now you'll hear what it sounds like when I speak. And in that moment, I realized, my father's silence wasn't weakness. It was inheritance. But when the morning came, and I finally saw what my father had written in the sealed file, I understood why my mother looked terrified, because one of the names he warned me about was hers. I arrived at Kamar and Associates just after sunrise. The city was still half asleep, the streets slick with dew, the sky streaked with pink and gray like bruised silk. My reflection in the glass doors looked older, sharper, like a woman stripped of illusions. Inside, the air smelled faintly of ink and metal cabinets. Mr. Idris Kamar was waiting in his office, suit pressed, tie perfectly centered, his calm demeanor almost eerie. He gestured toward a chair opposite his desk. "Mrs. Hassan," he greeted. "You said you wanted everything." "Yes," I said. "No more filters." He nodded once, opened a side drawer, and pulled out a thick brown folder stamped "Confidential." When he dropped it onto the desk, dust rose like the ghost of history. "Your father kept meticulous records," he began, adjusting his glasses. He anticipated that some interference might occur. I folded my arms. "You mean betrayal?" He didn't flinch. "Yes." He slid the first document toward me, a handwritten memorandum dated 6 months before my father's death. At the top, in his slanted writing, "If Amna ever reads this, it means trust has already been broken." My throat tightened as I read. "I have reason to believe certain members of my family are preparing to alter the estate terms. I've asked our counsel to place a legal trigger on my daughter's name. If any deceit or alteration is detected, she becomes the primary beneficiary, regardless of marital or social standing." I stared at the words, numb. "He knew." Mr. Kamar nodded. "He did. And he took steps to protect you." "Then how did they still manage to block it?" I demanded. He sighed, tapping the next file. "Because protection isn't perfect when family is involved. Your mother petitioned the court, claiming your father's mental capacity was in decline during his final year. She used that argument to freeze the trust." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "She called him incompetent?" "Yes. But the court never proved it." I pressed my fingers against my temples, dizzy. "I can't believe she did that." Mr. Kamar looked at me gently. "People will call anything love if it keeps them in control." He reached for another folder. This one was thinner, labeled in blue ink, "Private Annex." "I'm showing you this because you asked for truth," he said. "But it may change how you see your father." I hesitated. "Show me." He opened it and revealed a photograph, my father standing outside an office, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The man looked young, maybe early 30s, well-dressed, confident. "Who is he?" I asked. "That," Kamar said, "is Amir Rafi. He was your father's financial advisor." I frowned. "I've never heard that name." "Of course not," Kamar said. "Your mother had all his records deleted from the estate files after your father's death. She called him a fraud. But your father trusted him completely." "Why?" He tapped another document, an email printout dated 2 weeks before my father's heart attack. "Amir, I've signed the amendments. Keep them sealed. If my wife or eldest daughter interferes, deliver them to Amna directly. She'll know what to do." My hands trembled. "She knew about him, didn't she?" "Yes," he said softly. "And that's why she tried to erase him." I stared down at the photo again. "Where is he now?" "Unreachable," Kamar said. "He disappeared after your father's funeral. We suspect he fled the country. But his name appears in several offshore filings tied to your sister's business interests." I looked up sharply. "You're saying Sarah's connected to him?" He nodded slowly. "Through shell accounts. The transfers began 3 months after your father's passing. I have copies of the wire receipts." He handed them to me, columns of numbers, names, account codes in the Cayman Islands. I wasn't fluent in financial language, but I understood theft when I saw it. This is criminal, I whispered. Yes, he said. And that's why your father's betrayal clause activated. I frowned. Betrayal clause? Kumar smiled faintly. Your father believed betrayal wasn't emotional, it was measurable. He created a legal condition that automatically transferred estate control to you once fraud was detected. But the moment it did, your mother's legal team buried the activation under a mountain of appeals. So this trust has been frozen all these years because they were hiding a trigger my father set? Exactly. I sank back in the chair, stunned. My father's silence wasn't neglect, it was strategy. He hadn't been weak. He'd been waiting. Mr. Kumar, I said quietly. Why are you helping me now? You could have sided with them. He studied me for a long moment before answering. Because your father asked me to protect the truth, not the family. His eyes flickered toward the far side of the office, a locked cabinet with a keypad. And because he left something else for you. My pulse quickened. What is it? He stood, walking to the cabinet. Something I was instructed to keep sealed until you asked for everything. I watched as he punched in a code, the lock clicking open with a mechanical sigh. Inside was a single black envelope bound with red thread. He brought it over carefully, setting it in front of me like a relic. This hasn't been opened since the day he died, he said. My fingers shook as I untied the thread. Inside was a letter, handwritten, longer than the last, and far more personal. My dearest Amna. If this letter reaches you, it means they've done what I feared. You must not let guilt stop you from seeing them for who they are. Your mother's loyalty will always be to image, not truth. And your sister's to envy, not family. The ink was faded in places, but his words burned clear. There is another name you must know, Amir Rafi. He helped me secure assets in trust for you and your children. But if he disappears, find the documentation under the HR holdings and damn him. Do not trust anyone who claims to act for your protection. Not even blood. My vision blurred. The room felt like it was tilting. He knew they'd betray me, I whispered. Kumar's expression softened. He knew betrayal was a pattern, not a mistake. I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling its pulse through the paper. What happens next? He folded his hands. Your sister's case moves quickly. You have two options, defend reactively or strike first. What would striking first mean? He smiled slightly. Filing for a discovery order. If the court grants it, we can expose every transaction they've tried to bury. It'll force full disclosure before their narrative solidifies. My breath hitched. Can we win that? If we find one undeniable link between your sister and Amir, yes. I hesitated. And if we don't? Then they'll drag your name through the mud before the hearing even begins. I nodded slowly. Then we find the link. He slid another paper toward me. Start here. It's a property registration for HR Holdings. It's owned jointly by your father, and someone listed only as SH. I stared at the initials. Sarah Hassan. Kumar nodded. Your sister signed ownership transfer documents 4 months after your father's death. She had no legal right to do that. How did she even get access? He sighed. Your mother was still executor at the time. She gave her power of attorney. I felt my stomach twist. So they did it together. Yes, he said quietly. And they left a paper trail. The rain started again outside, soft against the office windows. I sat there absorbing every word, every implication, every ghost of my father's foresight. Finally, I looked up. You said something yesterday, that people twist silence into confession. He nodded. Well, I said, folding the letter carefully. It's time I make noise. Kumar smiled faintly. Then I'll prepare the filings. He stood, reaching for a pen to sign a few preliminary pages. One more thing, he added, almost as an afterthought. Your father wasn't the only one who left me instructions. I frowned. What do you mean? He looked at me over his glasses. Your husband did too. My heart stopped. What? Kumar opened a small drawer and pulled out another envelope, this one newer, sealed in plain white, with my husband's handwriting on the front. He gave this to me months ago, Kumar said. Told me to deliver it when the case reopened. I turned toward my husband, who'd been standing silently near the door the whole time. His face was unreadable. Why? I demanded. What is this? He hesitated, then said softly, because I knew this day would come, and I didn't want you blindsided. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a short letter. Amna, when you read this, you'll hate me for keeping secrets. But I've been helping Mr. Kumar trace the estate quietly. I found out 6 months ago that Sarah was moving assets under your father's name. I didn't tell you because I needed proof. I wanted to come back when I could protect you, not warn you. My vision blurred again, but this time from disbelief. If this letter reaches you, it means the truth is already unraveling. Don't run from it. Finish what your father started. I looked up, tears hot against my skin. You knew all this time? He nodded. I was building a case behind the scenes. Every step they took left a trace. But I needed you ready before I showed you the rest. I shook my head. You should have told me. I couldn't, he said. You wouldn't have believed me until now. I wanted to argue, to rage, to cry, but instead, I just stared at him, the man who disappeared to protect me while my family convinced me he'd abandoned me. And in that moment, the puzzle pieces locked into place. My father's silence. My husband's absence. My family's fear. None of it had been coincidence. It had been war. I turned back to Kumar, my voice steady. File the discovery order. He nodded. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. As I left his office, clutching both letters, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, control. The kind that came from truth, not illusion. But as we stepped outside, my husband's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. I frowned. What is it? He turned the screen toward me. It was a text message from an unknown number. If you file anything tomorrow, we'll make sure Amna never steps foot in that courtroom. Someone else was involved, someone powerful enough to threaten us before the first filing. And I had a sinking feeling I already knew who was pulling the strings. The message glared up at us from my husband's phone like a bruise that refused to fade. If you file anything tomorrow, we'll make sure Amna never steps foot in that courtroom. No name. No number traceable. Just words sharpened into a threat. For a long time, neither of us moved. The street outside the law office was alive with traffic, the morning sun bouncing off windshields, life going on as if my entire existence wasn't being dissected behind curtains of legal jargon and malice. My husband's knuckles whitened as he gripped the phone. They're desperate, he muttered. That means we're close. Close to what? I whispered. Losing everything? He turned to me, eyes steady. No. Close to proving how far they'll go to keep the truth buried. But my pulse wouldn't slow. The message wasn't just intimidation, it was knowledge. Someone knew where I'd be. What we planned. Someone was watching us. I forced my voice to stay calm. Forward it to Kumar. Now. He did. Within minutes, the lawyer called back. Don't panic, he said briskly. It's standard scare tactics. We'll report it. But you mustn't react emotionally, they want that. I almost laughed. Too late for that. That night, I couldn't eat. The house felt smaller, the walls thinner, the shadows heavier. I kept pacing between the living room and the study, that message replaying in my mind like a curse. At midnight, my husband finally caught my hand. Sit. Breathe. You're shaking. I'm fine, I lied. He crouched beside me. No, you're terrified. And you should be. But don't let it own you. I looked at him, eyes stinging. They're not just fighting for money. They're fighting to erase me. Again. He nodded slowly. Then make it hurt for them this time. The next morning, Kumar called us to his office. The moment we walked in, I knew something had changed. He looked unsettled, his usual calm replaced by a faint tension. I received documents from the opposing counsel last night, he said, sliding a thin folder across the desk. You should see them. I opened the folder, and my breath caught. At the top was a bold heading. Petition to disqualify beneficiary on grounds of unfit character and marital fraud. My vision swam. What is this? They filed a claim, Kumar said quietly. Your sister is alleging that your marriage is fraudulent and that your husband conspired with you to manipulate your father for financial gain. I stared at the page, unable to form words. Manipulate, my father? He nodded grimly. They're painting a picture that you married beneath your class, against family advice, to gain access to your father's assets. They've attached statements from your mother and 2 distant relatives. The air left my lungs. My mother signed this? Yes. He hesitated before adding, she also swore that your father expressed doubts about your mental stability after your marriage. I blinked, trying to process the betrayal layered in those words. She's calling me unstable? She's claiming concern, Kumar said delicately. But legally, it translates to incompetence. My husband slammed his palm on the desk. This is madness. They're rewriting her life. Kumar sighed. That's how they win cases, by rewriting memory. I flipped through the pages, each one more grotesque than the last. They'd included fabricated text messages, edited screenshots of private conversations that never happened. My sister's handwriting decorated the margins of one affidavit like an artist's flourish. I felt cold, like my blood had turned to glass. They planned this. Kumar nodded. This isn't spontaneous. They've been building this case for months, maybe years. It's an orchestrated character assassination. I turned to my husband. How do we fight this? By proving intent, Kumar said. We show that their motive is inheritance theft, not justice. And we need evidence, financial, legal, emotional. Emotional? I asked. He smiled thinly. Yes. In family court, emotion is evidence. Your composure, your truthfulness, your consistency, they all become weapons. So, Amna, I need you calm when they try to break you. Calm. The word tasted foreign in my mouth. 2 hours later, we were still at the table, dissecting the legal traps they'd laid. The room smelled like burnt coffee and tension. Every sentence Kumar read felt like another knife drawn across my memory. At one point, I asked quietly, how could she do this? How could my own mother swear against me? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because she believes her truth protects her image. People like her confuse control with love. I looked down at the affidavit again, my mother's signature looping gracefully at the bottom. I remembered that same hand tucking my hair behind my ear before my wedding, whispering, don't let him change you. And now, she was using that love as testimony to destroy me. That evening, my phone rang again, another unknown number. I hesitated but answered. Still think you can win? A woman's voice said, soft and mocking. You never learn, do you? My throat tightened. Sarah. Congratulations on your little discovery order, she purred. You think Baba's ghost will save you? He's not here to clean your mess anymore. You forged his trust, I snapped. You used his death to make yourself rich. She laughed, low and cruel. Oh, please. Everyone knows you couldn't handle money if your life depended on it. You always needed someone else to carry you, first him, then your husband. Why are you doing this? Because you don't deserve it, she hissed. You never did. You were always the favorite, the saint. Well, saints don't get everything. My pulse raced. You're scared, I said suddenly. Of you, she laughed again. Don't flatter yourself. I just like watching you scramble. But then her tone shifted, low and venomous. You're not ready for what's coming, Amna. You think this is about inheritance? It's about humiliation. And I'm going to make sure when that judge looks at you, he sees nothing worth saving. Click. The line went dead. I stood there, the phone still in my hand, my chest heaving. My husband appeared at the doorway, alarmed. What happened? She called, I whispered. She's not fighting for money. She's fighting to break me. He stepped forward and cupped my face gently. Then don't let her. I met his gaze. She's filing claims about my marriage, my sanity, my father's trust, what's left to defend. He smiled faintly. You. The next morning, we returned to Kamar's office to prepare our response. He had new files on his desk, financial ledgers, transaction histories, forensic audits. This, he said, tapping one of them, is where we start hitting back. I leaned over to read. It was a bank transfer dated shortly after my father's death, large sums moving from a family account into one marked HR Holdings. Attached to it was Sarah's signature. Kamar pointed at the bottom. And that, he said, is your mother's cosign. My breath caught. They withdrew money before probate closed. Exactly, Kamar said. That's theft under inheritance law. If we submit this, it strengthens your case, and potentially opens them to criminal exposure. Then submit it, I said. He hesitated. There's one risk. Once we expose this, they'll know we've traced the accounts. Expect escalation. Let them escalate, my husband said firmly. We're done playing defense. Kamar nodded. Then we proceed. But Amna, when they hit back, and they will, I need you ready for anything. Even personal attacks. I straightened. I've lived through worse than their words. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Late that afternoon, Kamar's assistant burst into the room, breathless. Sir, we just received a motion from opposing counsel. He took the document, skimmed it, and his face darkened. They're moving faster than I thought. He handed it to me. Read it. My eyes scanned the lines, and then froze. They weren't just questioning my marriage now. They were questioning my children. Petitioner reserves the right to investigate the legitimacy of the minors Zain and Layla Hassan, alleging uncertainty regarding paternal lineage. I dropped the paper. They're questioning my twins' paternity? Kamar's voice was gentle but grave. It's a smear tactic. A cruel one. They're trying to destabilize you. I couldn't breathe. The room blurred, the floor tilting under my feet. My husband caught me before I fell. Hey, look at me. It's lies, Amna. Just lies. Tears blurred my vision. They're dragging our children into this. Kamar's expression hardened. Then we'll drag them into truth. He picked up the motion, his jaw tight. We'll respond immediately, with DNA proof, marriage certificates, everything they don't expect you to have. My husband nodded grimly. They want war? They'll get it. I wiped my eyes, the tremor in my hands replaced by something steadier, fury. No more silence. No more fear. Kamar leaned forward. Good, he said. Because the judge has already scheduled the preliminary hearing. When? My husband asked. Kamar's eyes met mine. 3 days from now. The world went quiet. 3 days until I'd face my family in court. 3 days until my entire past would be dissected under oath. 3 days until truth or ruin. I stared out the window at the gray sky, my reflection fractured across the glass. For years, they'd buried me under lies. Now, they were going to hear me rise. As the storm gathered for the first hearing, one question burned louder than the rest. What secret had my father hidden so deeply that my own mother would perjure herself to keep it buried? The day before the hearing, my phone lit up with a message from my mother. Family meeting. Tonight. Come alone. 3 words, and I could already smell the trap beneath them. Still, I went. Because sometimes, the only way to face monsters is to walk into their house and stare them down. The meeting was at my childhood home, the one I hadn't stepped into for years. The air was still thick with the scent of my father's cologne, though it had long faded into memory. I stood at the gate, staring up at the same windows that once held my childhood dreams and now only reflected secrets. My husband wanted to come, but I told him no. This is my battlefield, I said. Let me face them first. When the maid opened the door, her expression flickered, shock, pity, then silence. She stepped aside without a word. I entered, heels echoing against the marble, my pulse louder than my steps. They were all there. My mother, sitting like a queen on the velvet couch. Sarah, standing beside her in an expensive suit, arms crossed, lips curled. And 2 of my aunts, spectators pretending to be mediators. Amna, my mother said, forcing a smile. You look tired. I smiled back. So do you. Her expression twitched. Please, sit. I stayed standing. I'll stand. Sarah rolled her eyes. Of course. Always the dramatic one. I learned from the best, I said evenly. My mother exhaled sharply. Let's not do this. We called you here to make peace. Peace? I repeated. After you accused me of fraud and questioned my children's existence? Misunderstandings, she said, waving a manicured hand. Lawyers twist things. You know how it goes. Do I? I asked. Because it sounded like you signed those statements. Her jaw tightened. It was legal advice. I laughed, low, humorless. And you always follow advice when it benefits Sarah, don't you? Sarah's eyes narrowed. Don't start. Oh, I've already started, I said, stepping closer. You forged documents. You siphoned funds. You filed lies. And now you want me to pretend we're a happy family again? My mother rose to her feet. Watch your tone. I watched it for 30 years, I snapped. Now it's your turn. The room fell silent. My aunts shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other. My mother glanced at them, embarrassed by the loss of control. This isn't helping anyone, she said softly, her tone switching to manipulation. Amna, sit down. Let's talk like family. We stopped being family when you used my name in court papers, I said. Sarah smirked. You always make yourself the victim. No, I said. You just keep volunteering to be the villain. Her smile faltered. You think you've won because of some papers? You don't understand how this works. Then explain it to me, I said, folding my arms. Explain how you forged my father's signature on the HR property documents. That hit her. Her pupils dilated, her throat bobbed. What did you say? I said, I repeated, I've seen the papers. The ones you signed with his initials. My mother stiffened. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I stepped closer, my voice cold. You filed property transfers under a holding name my father created, and then buried the evidence under his trust. Did you really think the trail wouldn't lead back to you? Sarah's mask cracked. You have no proof. Not yet, I said. But I will. My mother snapped, enough. This is ridiculous. Your father would be ashamed of you, I finished. Of both of you. Her hand trembled, clutching her pearls like a rosary. You don't know what your father was like at the end. He was confused, fragile. Stop calling him fragile. I shouted. He wasn't weak, he was dying, and you turned that into opportunity. Sarah slammed her hand on the coffee table. You ungrateful. No, I interrupted, my voice shaking but firm. I'm the one he trusted. That's why you hate me. You've spent years trying to erase me because he didn't leave you everything. She glared at me, eyes glinting. You think you were special? He pitied you. That's all. Her words were knives, but I didn't flinch. Maybe. But even pity is more than he ever gave you. Aunt Noor, the eldest, finally spoke. Enough, both of you. This is shameful. I turned to her. Then tell them to stop lying. She sighed. Amna, there are things you don't understand. Then enlighten me, I said. Because from where I stand, it looks like you all helped hide stolen money. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother's eyes darted towards Sarah, an involuntary flicker. And I saw it. The truth wasn't a theory anymore, it was alive in that look. I whispered, you both did it together. Sarah's voice wavered. You have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, I do, I said. You needed her authority to access those accounts. And she gave it, didn't she? Power of attorney. Convenient timing. My mother snapped, stop twisting. Then deny it. I yelled. Look me in the eyes and tell me you didn't give Sarah the right to steal what my father left me. She said nothing. Her silence was louder than any confession. Sarah's eyes darted away, her voice trembling now. You don't know the whole story. Then tell me, I said. Tell me why my father's lawyer said funds were transferred to your business accounts under false invoices. Tell me why a man named Amir Rafi, someone tied to both of you, disappeared after his signature appeared on trust documents. My mother's face went pale. Amir. I stepped closer. Yes, him. The man my father trusted. The man who was last seen at your office the day before he died. She whispered, you don't understand. Then explain it. I demanded. But neither of them spoke. The silence cracked like thunder. Sarah suddenly laughed, high, brittle, manic. You think you've uncovered some grand conspiracy? You're just bitter that no one wanted you here. Baba's estate, the family business, the respect, you were never built for it. You were emotional, messy, impulsive. You were small. Her words didn't hurt anymore. They were a script I'd already outgrown. You mistake cruelty for strength, I said quietly. That's why you'll lose. Her eyes burned. You don't scare me. You should be scared, I said. Because this time I'm not walking away. My mother took a shaky breath. You can't win this. Even if you expose us, you'll destroy your own name. I smiled faintly. Maybe my name needs burning. She whispered, and what about your children? You'll drag them through this humiliation? I looked her straight in the eyes. They'll know their mother fought back. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her expression, not rage, not control, fear. Because she realized she'd lost her last weapon, guilt. The doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the tension like a gunshot. One of my aunts went to answer it, and when she opened the door, my husband stepped inside. He wasn't supposed to come, but the look on his face told me he had reason. He walked straight to me, eyes fixed on Sarah. We need to go. Now. What happened? I asked. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a notification, an official court update. Sarah's legal team had just filed a motion to freeze all of our assets, including our home. I looked up at her. You did this? She smiled coldly. Actions have consequences. My husband's voice hardened. So does fraud. We turned to leave, but my mother called after me. Amna. I stopped. Her voice trembled. Don't go to court. You don't understand what you're about to uncover. I faced her. Then tell me. She hesitated, eyes filling with something like sorrow. If you open that trust in front of the judge, you'll learn something about your father that will destroy you. For a moment, the room spun. I searched her face for truth, but all I saw was fear. I'd rather be destroyed by truth, I said, then live under your lies. And I walked out. Outside, the sky had turned dark and heavy with storm clouds. My husband squeezed my hand as we rushed to the car. She's bluffing, he said. But as thunder rolled above us, I wasn't sure anymore. My mother's warning didn't sound like manipulation this time. It sounded like confession. And somewhere deep down, I knew, whatever secret she was guarding wasn't just about money. It was about him. Cliffhanger. As the storm broke over the city, one question drowned out the thunder. What truth about my father was so dangerous my mother would rather perjure herself than let me find it? Type yes to continue to Chapter 3, Part 2. You said. Yes. ChatGPT said. Chapter 3, Part 2, The Evidence I Didn't Know Existed. Word count, 1,633. The storm didn't stop all night. It pounded the windows like it had something to say, like it wanted to remind me that truth never stays buried quietly. By morning, I hadn't slept. My eyes burned from crying and staring at legal files until the words blurred. My husband brewed coffee in silence. We didn't need words, exhaustion had become our language. When the clock struck 9, we were at Kamar and Associates again. The air inside was heavy, static, like the moment before lightning. Idris Kamar stood by the window, flipping through papers. He turned to us. You were right not to trust your mother's invitation, he said. That family meeting wasn't reconciliation, it was reconnaissance. I frowned. Reconnaissance? He nodded. They wanted to see how much you know. What evidence you have. Your sister called their lawyer right after you left. My stomach sank. So they're watching every move. Good, he said. Then let's give them something to watch. He slid a new folder across the table. We found the first real piece of proof, something your father left that no one knew existed. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were printed transaction logs, each line ending with the same code, HR Holdings, the mysterious company tied to my sister. What am I looking at? I asked. Kamar leaned forward. These are withdrawals made from your father's trust, before probate, before any legal authorization. Your sister accessed them through an intermediary account registered in your mother's name. I blinked. In my mother's name? Yes. It was disguised as maintenance withdrawals for estate property upkeep. But the sums were too large, hundreds of thousands at a time. I swallowed hard. So she was complicit. Kamar nodded. Not only that. She signed a joint declaration claiming you'd forfeited your inheritance when you married without her consent. I felt my chest tighten. Forfeited? That's not even legal. It isn't, he said. But it was effective. It allowed Sarah to move funds while your father's assets were frozen for review. My husband leaned over the papers. Who else knows this? Right now? Just us. But once we file the discovery motion, they'll see the evidence too. I closed the folder slowly, the weight of it settling into my bones. This isn't just greed, I said quietly. It's premeditated erasure. Kamar's assistant, a quiet young woman named Farah, entered carrying a box of files. Sir, we retrieved these from the offsite archives. You should see this one. He took a manila envelope from her and handed it to me. This is where things get personal. Inside was a printed email chain between my father and his attorney from years ago. The subject line read. Trust Amendment, Trigger Clause, Final Draft. And in my father's own words. If either of them attempts to remove Amna from the estate, I want the clause to activate immediately. Idris, you know what to do. They've been manipulating her for years. She doesn't see it yet. But one day she will. And when she does, she must have proof she was never the crazy one. The words hit me like a punch. My throat closed. I whispered, he knew they'd make me doubt my sanity. Kamar nodded softly. He left this for that exact reason. My husband's hand found mine under the table. He was protecting you the whole time. I looked down at the line again, the ink smudged from my tears. She was never the crazy one. For years, they'd said I was unstable, irrational, dramatic. But my father had seen through it all. He'd written the antidote to their poison before they could even administer it. But the next file Kumar opened chilled me more. This, he said, tapping a thin folder, was submitted by your sister's legal team last night. It contains her affidavit. He handed it to me carefully, as if he knew how much it would hurt. The first paragraph began. My sister, Amna Hassan, has a history of emotional volatility, and my late father expressed deep concern about her ability to manage financial matters. I believe it is in the best interest of our family for the court to appoint a neutral trustee. Below that, in bold italics, was a sentence that made my stomach twist. Her husband, an outsider with a history of financial mismanagement, has influenced her behavior and may be using her to access the estate. I stared at it, the room fading around me. She called you an outsider, I said to my husband. She made you sound like a threat. He exhaled slowly. Let her. I'll be the threat that ends her case. Kumar gave a grim smile. Her lawyer is reckless. These are defamatory statements. Once we disprove them, we'll have grounds to countersue. I shook my head. She's not reckless. She's confident because she thinks she's already won. Kumar turned to his assistant. Farah, show them the video. She nodded and pulled out a flash drive, plugging it into the large monitor on the wall. This was part of the recovered files from the estate's security logs, she explained. We found it in the server backup your father's staff preserved. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The date stamp read, April 14th, 8 years ago, the night before my father's death. The video showed his study. My father sat at his desk, pale, tired, still wearing his glasses. Sarah stood across from him, her posture stiff, her voice faint through the recording. You don't understand, Baba. I'm doing this for the family. No, he said, his voice fragile but firm. You're doing this for yourself. Amna doesn't deserve everything. She deserves honesty, he snapped, slamming his palm on the desk. You've lied enough. Then my mother entered the frame. Stop yelling. You'll give yourself another attack. My father pointed at them both. If I die tonight, remember this, my silence won't save you. The screen went black. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. That was the last night he was alive. Kumar nodded. The timestamp confirms it. Your father recorded that argument without their knowledge. It's admissible evidence. My husband whispered, they fought with him right before he couldn't finish. I sank back into the chair, tears streaking my face. They drove him to it. No, Kumar said quietly. They didn't kill him. But they killed the piece he tried to leave behind. I wiped my tears and looked at him. This video, will it hold up in court? He nodded. Yes. It proves motive. It proves intent. And it proves your father's clarity. That's everything we need to dismantle their claims. I exhaled shakily. Then use it. We will, he promised. But there's something else you should know. He opened another drawer and took out a sealed envelope labeled, for Amna, only if challenged. My pulse quickened. Another letter? He handed it to me. It was his final instruction to me. He said you'd need it if they ever called you a liar. I tore it open. Inside was a single page written in his steady hand. Amna, if they say you don't belong, remind them who built what they're trying to steal. You are my legacy, not because of inheritance, but because you never learned how to be cruel. Below his signature was a line I hadn't seen in any of his other letters. There is one more key. Ask Idris about the drawer marked Tala. I looked up, startled. What's Tala? Kumar's face went pale. That drawer has been sealed since he died. I thought it was personal. Open it, I said. He hesitated, then unlocked a small cabinet near the wall. Inside was a black file folder labeled simply, Tala. He laid it on the desk and flipped it open. Inside were photographs, property receipts, and one birth certificate. When I saw the name printed there, the room spun. Tala Rafi. Born 1995. Father, Hassan M. Rafi. Mother, Layla M. Rafi. My breath caught. Rafi, I whispered. As in? Amir Rafi? Kamar nodded. Yes. But look closer. I did, and felt the ground vanish beneath me. Guardian, Sarah Hassan. I stared at the document, shaking. My sister is guardian to Amir Rafi's daughter? Kamar's voice was quiet. Yes. And based on the timeline, it appears your sister and Amir weren't just partners in business. The realization hit me like a storm surge, violent, unstoppable. All the secrecy, the property transfers, the money hidden under HR holdings, it wasn't just financial corruption. It was personal. Sarah and Amir had been together. And they'd built their scheme on my father's back. I whispered, so that's why she panicked when his name came up. My husband's voice was tight. She's not protecting money. She's protecting scandal. Kamar nodded. And if that relationship overlaps with the trust's timeline, it's not just unethical, it's fraud with emotional manipulation. A legal bomb. I felt my heart pounding so hard I could barely speak. Does my mother know? Kamar hesitated. Given her role in covering transactions, I'd say yes. I closed my eyes. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, if you open that trust, you'll destroy your memory of him. Now I understood. She wasn't protecting my father's memory. She was protecting her own shame. I stood, trembling. We use this. All of it. The video, the letters, the account records, the guardian document. Everything. Kamar nodded slowly. Are you sure? Once this enters the court record, your family will be exposed publicly. I met his eyes. Good. My husband squeezed my hand, his voice steady. It's time. Kamar exhaled. Then I'll file it today. But Amna, he paused. When you go to court tomorrow, they'll try to break you before the evidence breaks them. Don't let them see fear. I straightened. They'll see what they made me. As we left the office, the rain had stopped. The air was cold, but clear. I felt like I could finally breathe again. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking away from their cruelty, I was walking toward their reckoning. And as we drove home, my phone buzzed again. A message. From Sarah. Enjoy your little victory. But remember, he's not the only one who kept secrets from you. No name. No context. Just venom. I looked at the screen until the words blurred, my reflection staring back at me in the glass. Something inside me whispered, she's not bluffing. What secret was Sarah hinting at, and how much of my father's legacy was still built on lies I hadn't uncovered yet? When someone wants to destroy you, they don't come for your money first. They come for your name. 2 days before the hearing, my name was everywhere. WhatsApp groups, community gossip chains, family circles that once smiled at me now whispered behind their screens. I didn't even have to search for it, my phone was proof enough. Dozens of messages from people who'd never defended me suddenly checking in. Amna, I saw something online. Is it true? Are you okay? I can't believe your own sister would. Though honestly, it's hard to know who to believe. That last line stung the most. Because that was the point. Sarah didn't just want to win in court, she wanted to win the narrative. It started with a leak. A carefully edited recording from years ago, me yelling, crying, begging my mother to tell me the truth about my father's trust. Only the audio was trimmed to make it sound like I was hysterical, unhinged. Then came the anonymous blog post titled, The Real Story Behind the Hassan Family Feud. It called me a manipulative daughter, an unfit mother, a wife who used tragedy for personal gain. The post cited sources close to the family, Sarah's favorite phrase. By the time I reached Kamar's office that morning, I was shaking with fury. "She's turning my life into a headline." He sighed. "That's what people with power do when they start losing it." My husband paced near the window, jaw clenched. "This isn't just gossip, it's defamation." Kamar nodded. "And it's illegal. But her timing isn't accidental. She's setting up public perception ahead of the hearing. Judges claim they don't read the news, but they do feel pressure." "Then how do we fight back?" I demanded. He met my eyes. "By being undeniable. By turning her narrative into evidence of intent." The plan was simple: stay silent, stay calm, let her overplay her hand. But I wasn't built for silence anymore. That evening, my twins came home from school quieter than usual. Layla, my daughter, clutched her backpack like a shield. "Mama," she whispered, "our teacher said not to believe what people say online." My stomach dropped. "What did they say?" Zayn looked at me, eyes confused. "They said Daddy was bad. That he tricked Nana and Kalto." The words made my vision swim. "Who told you that?" "Someone's mom," he said softly. "She said her friend read it." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. My children, innocent, small, beautiful, were now being dragged into a war they never asked for. My husband knelt beside them. "Look at me," he said gently. "None of what they're saying is true. Your mama and I love you. That's the only truth that matters." Layla nodded, her lip trembling. "But why do they hate us?" He smiled sadly. "Because they're afraid of us." That night, when the twins were asleep, I sat in the living room with my husband. The glow from the streetlights painted his face in fractured amber. "They're trying to isolate us," I said quietly. "Make us so hated that even if we win, no one cares." He nodded. "Then we make sure the truth is louder than their noise." "How?" He reached for a folder on the coffee table, the one he'd been adding to for months. Inside were screenshots, audio clips, notarized statements. "Because I've been documenting everything since the day they started harassing us." I blinked. "You've been keeping records?" He nodded. "Voicemails from your mother. Calls from Sarah's number. Bank statements they sent under false names. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to carry it all." Tears blurred my vision. "You carried it for me." He smiled faintly. "Until you were ready to carry it yourself." The next morning, I took the folder to Kamar. His eyes widened as he flipped through the contents. "Where did you get all this?" "My husband," I said quietly. "He's been preparing." Kamar's lips curved into a rare smile. "Then we have leverage." He opened one of the transcripts and read aloud a voicemail from my sister. "If she doesn't drop the claim, I'll make sure she never shows her face in public again." He looked up. "This is a direct threat." My pulse quickened. "Then use it." "Oh, I will," he said. This just became a criminal matter. That afternoon, as Kamar filed the defamation complaint, we received a new email from the court clerk: "Emergency motion filed by opposing counsel." I opened it, my stomach twisting. The motion was to invalidate my father's final amendments, claiming the signatures on the trust were forged. Kamar swore under his breath. "They're attacking the foundation." I sank into the chair, numb. "They're calling my father a liar now." He rubbed his temple. "We'll handle it. The court will call for handwriting verification. It'll take time." But my husband wasn't convinced. "They're trying to stall. If the trust is declared invalid, all your claims freeze." Kamar nodded grimly. "He's right. So what do we do?" I asked. He glanced at me, his voice low. "We prepare for war in court. And we expose every last secret before they can rewrite the truth." The following day, I walked into the courthouse for the preliminary hearing. The building smelled like dust and polished marble. The echo of footsteps was too loud, too final. When I saw my family sitting together on the opposite side, my mother, Sarah, my uncles, I almost couldn't breathe. They looked united. Coordinated. Like a picture from a magazine, polished, grieving, noble. And then there was me, standing alone, painted by their lies as a scandal in human form. Sarah caught my gaze and smiled. It wasn't triumph. It was promise. A promise that she'd keep destroying me until I begged for mercy. But I wasn't here to beg. When the judge entered, everyone rose. His voice was clipped, his expression unreadable. We are here to address the motion to contest the validity of the Hassan Trust. Sarah's lawyer stood, a sleek man with 2 white teeth and an arrogance that could fill the room. Your Honor, we have reason to believe the trust's final amendments were falsified. The late Mr. Hassan's mental state was compromised, and the signature presented cannot be verified. Kamar rose. Objection, Your Honor. These allegations are baseless and defamatory. We have certified documents from 2 independent witnesses confirming the authenticity. The lawyer smirked. Witnesses who happen to be longtime associates of the claimant's husband. Kamar's voice hardened. Watch your insinuations. The judge lifted a hand. Enough. The court will review both parties' evidence. In the meantime, the trust remains frozen. The words hit me like cold water. Frozen. Again. All our progress, halted. Sarah's smile widened. I wanted to scream. To stand up and shout that she was the liar, the thief, the coward. But I stayed silent. Because anger is exactly what she wanted. After the session, as I gathered my papers, Sarah walked past me. Her perfume was sharp, familiar, lavender and malice. She leaned close, her voice a whisper. You're not ready for the next revelation. I didn't look at her. Neither were you when he caught you on camera. Her smile faltered for half a second before recovering. Good luck proving anything. By the time you do, I'll have already taken what's left. Then she was gone. Outside, the reporters were waiting. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Mrs. Hassan. Did your father disinherit you? Are the rumors about the forged signatures true? Do you have a response to your sister's accusations? I kept walking, my husband shielding me as flashes exploded around us. Kamar pushed through the crowd. Don't engage. The truth will speak in court. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. The truth wasn't a sword, it was a slow, bleeding wound. And I was running out of blood to give. That night, the rain returned. I sat by the window, watching lightning claw across the sky. The house was quiet, except for the twins' soft breathing in the next room. I whispered to the glass, to the storm, to my father's ghost, how much more do I have to lose before this ends? As if in answer, my phone buzzed. A new message. No name. No number. Just a single line. You think Sarah's your only enemy? Look deeper, Amna. Look at the man beside you. My heart stopped. I turned to where my husband stood by the hallway, his silhouette framed by the lightning. He was looking at me, but this time, something in his eyes was unreadable. The war had always been between me and my family, but what if the man I trusted most was hiding a truth that could break me all over again? I barely slept the night before the hearing. The message kept replaying in my mind, each word like a whisper from a ghost. Look at the man beside you. Who sent it? Sarah? My mother? Someone from her camp? Or was it true? Was there something my husband hadn't told me? By sunrise, I'd convinced myself it was manipulation. A psychological strike before court. Sarah wanted me unstable. And I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I got dressed slowly, black suit, no jewelry, hair tied back tight. A woman going to war, not mourning. When I walked downstairs, my husband was already in the car. His face was calm, too calm. Ready? He asked. Always, I lied. The courthouse loomed like a monument to judgment. The air smelled of metal and coffee, the kind of mix that only exists where lives get rewritten. Inside the courtroom, I saw them, my mother, her pearls gleaming like armor, Sarah, immaculate in cream, her lawyer whispering strategy into her ear. They looked composed. I looked human. And that was my weapon, they couldn't fake that. The judge entered, and the bailiff called for silence. Case number 2047, the clerk announced. Hassan estate hearing. Parties present, Ms. Amna Hassan, respondent and beneficiary, Ms. Sarah Hassan, petitioner, and counsel for both. Sarah's lawyer, the smug one with the porcelain smile, rose. Your Honor, we move to dismiss the respondent's claim to the trust based on evidence of fraud, coercion, and marital manipulation. Define manipulation, the judge said dryly. The lawyer turned toward me. Your Honor, Ms. Hassan's husband, who has remained suspiciously absent for years, reappeared only when the trust's reopening became public record. We intend to prove his involvement in the falsified documentation of the estate amendments. My stomach twisted. That was their play, to make him the villain. To make me collateral damage in my own defense. Kamar stood. Objection. Unfounded speculation, with no factual grounding. The judge gestured for calm. Overruled for now. I'll allow limited questioning on this matter. Proceed. Sarah's lawyer approached the witness stand where I sat. Ms. Hassan, he began smoothly, you claim these documents, he held up the trust amendments, were authentic and signed by your late father? Yes. And who provided them to you? I glanced at Kamar, then back at the lawyer. My father's attorney, Mr. Idris Kamar. Not your husband? No. He smiled thinly. Interesting. And yet, these same documents were first presented to the court by your husband, were they not? The words hit me like ice. I turned slightly toward Kamar. He frowned. That's impossible, he said under his breath. The lawyer continued, feigning concern. I have here an email chain between your husband and the probate registry, dated 3 days before your legal team's filing. Would you like to explain that? The courtroom murmured. I felt my pulse thunder in my ears. That can't be right, I whispered. Take your time, the lawyer said kindly, mockingly. We understand this is emotional. I didn't know, I said. I didn't know he. Thank you, he interrupted smoothly. That will be all for now. Kamar shot up. We'll require time to review this so-called correspondence. The judge nodded. Granted. Submit it for verification. Let's proceed. When the session broke for recess, I stormed into the hallway. What is this? I demanded, facing my husband. He raised his hands, calm. I can explain. Explain what? I hissed. That you sent our documents before we even filed? That you were talking to the court behind my back? I was protecting you. That's what everyone who betrays me says. His jaw tightened. Sarah's lawyer has contacts everywhere. I knew they'd try to block the filing. So I submitted the documents early, to timestamp them legally as yours. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you second-guessing me. You think that helps me? My voice cracked. Now they're using it to make you look like a fraud. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. They already decided I'm the villain. Let them. It gives them something to focus on that isn't you. For a moment, I didn't know whether to scream or fall into him. His logic was dangerous, and it made sense. Kamar joined us, his face grim. They're baiting you both. Don't take it personally, take it strategically. Strategically? I echoed. They're destroying my life. Kamar's tone softened. Amna, your husband's early submission isn't illegal. It's procedural. We'll prove that. But I need you composed. You'll have to testify again after recess. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and nodded. Then let's end this. When the court resumed, the judge announced, the respondent may take the stand again. I sat. My palms were sweating, but my gaze was steady. Sarah's lawyer smiled. Ms. Hassan, can you tell us the nature of your relationship with your father during the last year of his life? Close, I said. He was my confidant. Confidant, he repeated. And yet, he never told you about this so-called betrayal clause. Not once. He didn't need to, I replied. He trusted me to discover the truth when I was ready. The lawyer smiled cruelly. Ah. So this is more spiritual inheritance than legal, is it? Objection, Kamar said sharply. Sustained, the judge murmured. Move on. The lawyer flipped through his notes theatrically. Tell me, Ms. Hassan, were you aware that your father's medical records show cognitive decline in the last 6 months of his life? I froze. No. Well, they do, he said smugly. A documented history of confusion, memory lapses, and anxiety. Would it surprise you to know he was prescribed medication that impairs judgment? My breath hitched. That's a lie. We'll let the records speak for themselves. He handed a file to the judge. Your Honor, Exhibit D. The judge's brow furrowed. We'll review later. I looked toward my mother. She wasn't meeting my eyes. She was staring down at her lap, ashamed, or pretending to be. Sarah leaned forward, whispering something into her lawyer's ear. He nodded, and his tone shifted, more deliberate now, surgical. One final question, Ms. Hassan, he said. You've painted your husband as loyal and trustworthy. But if I told you there's evidence he was in contact with the same man your father accused of fraud, Mr. Amir Rafi, would that surprise you? The floor fell out from under me. What? I whispered. He smiled like a magician revealing a final trick. Phone records, Mrs. Hassan. Your husband exchanged calls with Mr. Rafi months before Mr. Rafi's disappearance. The courtroom gasped. I turned to my husband. Tell me that's not true. He didn't answer. The judge slammed his gavel. Order in the court. But all I could hear was my own pulse. Kamar tried to interject, Your Honor, we have no verification of those records. The lawyer interrupted, triumphant. We've submitted the call logs. They're real. My husband's jaw flexed, but he stayed silent. That silence, oh, God, that silence, was worse than any confession. Your Honor, he said finally, I can explain. The judge looked irritated. Then you'll do so under oath tomorrow. Court adjourned for the day. As soon as the gavel hit, I turned to him. You knew him? You knew Amir? He ran a hand through his hair. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. I tracked him, he said. After you told me your family erased his name, I started looking. I needed leverage, proof they were hiding something. He contacted me once before vanishing. I thought I could convince him to testify. I stepped back, trembling. You kept this from me. I was trying to protect you. You sound just like her, I spat. Like my mother. His face broke, hurt flashing through his eyes. Don't say that. But I already had. Kamar appeared beside us, voice low. Both of you, listen to me. If they can prove connection between your husband and Rafi, it'll taint your entire case. But if we show it was investigative, not collusive, we can neutralize it. I couldn't even respond. My hands were cold, my heart colder. I don't know what to believe anymore. Kamar placed a hand on my shoulder. Then believe the evidence. The rest can wait. We left the courthouse through the side entrance, avoiding the press. The rain had started again, thin and relentless. My husband walked beside me in silence. Finally, I said, How many more secrets, Hamid? How much more are you hiding from me? He looked at me, tired, desperate, human. Only the ones I thought would keep you alive. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the hearing over and over, every accusation, every silence. The man I loved, the one who'd walked back into that restaurant and saved me, was now tied to the same man who'd destroyed my father's trust. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to save me, had he just confirmed my family's worst lie? Cliffhanger. Tomorrow, he'd testify, and the truth would finally come out. But what if his truth was the one thing that could destroy me? Type yes to continue to Chapter 4, Part 2. You said. Yes. ChatGPT said. Chapter 4, Part 2, My Father's Letter, Their Faces, My Revenge. Word count, 1,633. The next morning, the courthouse didn't look like a building, it looked like a battlefield waiting to decide who deserved to breathe. I walked in feeling half human, half shell. My lawyer, Kumar, was calm, composed, but I saw the tension flickering behind his steady eyes. Today was his testimony. My husband. The man who'd walked back into my life carrying proof of my father's trust, now accused of being part of the very deception that tore my family apart. The air inside was heavy, like everyone was waiting for blood. Reporters lined the hallways. Cameras flashed. Words buzzed in the air: fraud, betrayal, scandal. My name. My father's name. My husband's name. All being chewed by strangers' tongues. When the judge entered, the room went silent. Call your witness, the judge ordered. Sarah's lawyer stood, smooth and confident. Your Honor, we call Mr. Hamid Hassan to the stand. He rose, adjusted his jacket, and walked forward. The man I once thought I'd lost. The one who'd fought to defend me. Every eye in the room followed him. He was sworn in, his hand steady on the Bible. But his eyes flickered once, toward me. I didn't look away. Mr. Hassan, Sarah's lawyer began, his tone polite but predatory. You were in contact with Mr. Amir Rafi before his disappearance? Yes, Hamid said simply. A ripple of whispers filled the room. The lawyer smiled faintly. So you admit it? I admit I spoke to him once, my husband said. He reached out to me, not the other way around. For what purpose? He said he had information about my wife's father's estate. He wanted money in exchange for proof of forged documents. And did you pay him? Hamid paused. No. Why not? Because he disappeared before I could. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. How convenient. Kumar stood. Objection. Counsel is implying motive without evidence. Sustained, the judge said. Stick to questions, counselor. The lawyer nodded, pacing. Mr. Hassan, you're aware that this court has phone logs showing several calls between you and Mr. Rafi? Yes. So it wasn't one conversation, was it? Hamid's jaw tightened. He contacted me repeatedly. I answered twice. After that, I stopped. Why? Because I realized he was being used. The lawyer leaned forward. By whom? My husband's voice cut through the silence. By Sarah Hassan. The courtroom exploded with murmurs. My mother gasped. Sarah's face went white, then red. That's a lie, she snapped. The judge banged his gavel. Order. But Hamid didn't flinch. His voice was calm, clear. She was funneling money through Rafi's firm years before my father-in-law's death. Rafi admitted it to me. He said Sarah promised him a permanent cut if he altered trust records. Sarah's lawyer laughed softly. Do you have proof of this alleged arrangement? Hamid glanced at Kumar, who opened a folder. We do, Kumar said. Exhibit G. He handed the document to the bailiff. The judge examined it, a notarized transcript of an email exchange between Sarah and Rafi. The dates matched exactly with the trust modifications. My sister's composure cracked visibly. Her lawyer's confident smile faltered. The judge's gaze darkened. This is damning evidence, Ms. Hassan. You'll have a chance to respond. Sarah's hand shook. It's fabricated, he's lying. But the judge ignored her for now, turning back to my husband. Continue, Mr. Hassan. Hamid nodded. When I realized Rafi was involved with my wife's family, I started documenting everything. I worked with Mr. Kamar to track transfers from estate accounts into foreign ones. The pattern was clear. Sarah authorized withdrawals under my mother-in-law's signature. The lawyer tried to cut in. You're implying a serious crime. Hamid interrupted, his tone steady but sharp. I'm not implying. I'm confirming. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. He's making this up. But her voice cracked. The courtroom could smell guilt now. It had a sound. A rhythm. And she was playing it perfectly. Kamar stood. Your Honor, permission to introduce Exhibit H, the final letter written by the late Mr. Hassan, now verified by forensic analysts as authentic. The judge nodded. Admitted. Kamar unfolded the paper carefully. This letter was sealed under instruction from Mr. Hassan's attorney and intended only to be opened if the trust was contested. Sarah's lawyer scoffed. Another conveniently timed document? Kamar ignored him. I'll read the relevant section aloud. He cleared his throat and began. To my wife and daughters, if this letter reaches you, it means you have chosen deception over truth. Sarah, I know about your involvement with Rafi. I forgive you as a father must, but as a man, I leave consequences behind. The moment you touch what isn't yours, Amna inherits not just my estate, but my authority. Gasps filled the courtroom. I felt my throat close, tears stinging my eyes. My father's voice, his justice, had finally arrived. Kamar continued reading. To my wife, Layla, you always feared losing control. Now you have. My silence was my shield. Amna, when they call you emotional, remember it is better to feel deeply than to steal quietly. He stopped reading. The silence that followed was thunderous. Sarah looked frozen, her face drained of color. My mother's eyes glistened with tears, but they weren't grief. They were fear. Sarah's lawyer struggled to regain footing. Your Honor, this letter could have been written by anyone. The judge interrupted. Mr. Kamar, you said this was verified? Yes, Your Honor. Handwriting experts confirmed the signature and ink age. The metadata matches the date of death. The judge nodded slowly. Then the letter stands. Sarah whispered something to her lawyer, desperate now. Her mask was slipping. I almost pitied her. Almost. Kamar leaned forward. Your Honor, we move to request immediate review of estate transactions under Section 48 for fraudulent interference. The judge looked at Sarah, then at my mother. This court is beginning to see a very clear pattern. My mother spoke for the first time. Her voice shook. Please, this isn't what you think. The judge's tone was ice. Then enlighten us, Mrs. Hassan. She clasped her pearls like they could protect her. My husband was sick. He was confused. Sarah handled the paperwork for me. The judge leaned back. So you admit you gave her access? Her silence was answer enough. Kamar's voice was low, steady. Your Honor, with permission, we'd like to play one last piece of evidence. The judge nodded. The lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered on. It was the security footage from my father's study, the one we'd found days ago. The courtroom watched as my father argued with Sarah and my mother. His voice, frail but fierce, echoed across the speakers. You don't understand. This money is meant to protect Amna's children. If you touch it, you'll regret it. Stop this nonsense, my mother shouted. If I die tonight, he said, slamming the desk, remember this, my silence won't save you. The video ended. The lights came back up. No one moved. The judge looked at Sarah. Ms. Hassan, do you wish to respond? She stared at the screen, then at me. I did what I had to, she said finally, her voice trembling. He was unfair. He always favored her. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Kamar said quietly, "Favor isn't theft, Ms. Hassan." Sarah's composure shattered. "You think you're better than me?" she hissed at me. "You always have. You hid behind his affection while I did all the work. You don't deserve." The judge slammed his gavel. "Enough." But I didn't flinch. I met her fury with stillness. "You could have had love," I said softly. "But you chose power." Her lip trembled. "You'll regret this." "No," I whispered. "You will." The judge cleared his throat. "Court will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments. But I advise both parties, especially the petitioner, to consider their next words carefully. Right now, this court's patience is thinner than its sympathy." He banged the gavel. Adjourned. As people began to leave, Sarah turned to my mother. "Say something. Fix this." But my mother just stared at her, eyes wet and hollow. "I can't fix what you broke." I walked past them, each step heavy with years of swallowed pride. When I reached the door, I looked back once. My sister looked small. My mother looked haunted. And for the first time in my life, I looked powerful. Outside, the press swarmed again. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions, but I didn't hear them. My husband stood beside me, silent. I didn't take his hand. Not yet. When we reached the car, I finally asked, "Did you know about that letter?" He hesitated. "I suspected there was one more. Idris didn't confirm it until this morning." I studied him. "You could have told me." He sighed. "I didn't want to give you hope until I was sure." I looked away, watching the rain streak down the windshield. "Hope's dangerous," I whispered. "But so is silence." He didn't argue. That night, I sat alone by the window, my father's letter open in my lap. His handwriting looked like truth itself, unforgiving, inevitable. He'd known everything. The betrayal. The lies. The theft. And he'd left the one thing they couldn't corrupt, evidence. The next day, the verdict would come. But I already knew the balance had shifted. The power was mine now, and they knew it. Still, one question lingered, burning through the victory like acid. If Sarah and my mother had betrayed him together, what else had they buried to keep his silence permanent? The letter had exposed their crimes, but tomorrow's final session would reveal something far darker, the real reason my father died. The courthouse felt different that morning. Still heavy, still cold, but quieter. The kind of silence that only follows after something breaks. The air carried tension, not noise. Even the reporters outside were cautious, whispering instead of shouting. They knew the story was no longer a scandal. It was a reckoning. Inside, my mother and sister sat at the front table, avoiding each other's eyes. Their alliance had finally cracked under the weight of truth. But even as I looked at them, something deep inside me whispered, "It isn't over yet." Kamar leaned toward me as we waited for the judge. "Today we close this, Amna," he murmured. "Stay composed. They'll try something desperate." I nodded. My hands were steady now. My fear had burned into resolve. Let them try. When the bailiff announced, "All rise," I felt the shift. The final day had begun. The judge entered, firm and focused. "This hearing will resume for closing arguments in the Hassan estate matter. Counsel for the petitioner, you may proceed." Sarah's lawyer rose, tired, defeated, but still clinging to arrogance like a mask. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges certain oversights in handling estate affairs, but insists there was no malicious intent. We request leniency and mediation, not punitive damages." The judge raised an eyebrow. "After verified fraud?" The lawyer swallowed. "A family's pain can cause." "Stop," the judge said flatly. "You're wasting the court's time." The air shifted. I could see Sarah shrinking behind her lawyer, eyes glassy, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She looked like she wanted to speak, but didn't. And that silence terrified me more than her words ever had. Kumar stood. Your Honor, we present our closing statement. He spoke with the precision of a surgeon and the calm of someone who'd already won. He reminded the court of every lie, every forged document, every whisper of deceit that had shaped this case. He read from my father's final letter, his voice reverent and unyielding. Silence was my shield, he quoted. Amna, when they call you emotional, remember it is better to feel deeply than to steal quietly. By the time he finished, the courtroom was still. Even the judge looked moved. Kumar sat. His hand brushed mine briefly, a silent acknowledgement that we'd made it. The judge cleared his throat. Before I deliver my ruling, this court will hear from one additional party who has filed for intervention. The words hit like thunder. Intervention? Kumar said, standing quickly. Your Honor, on what grounds? The bailiff handed the judge a folder. Filed late last night. Verified as valid under Section 62, new claimant tied to the estate. My pulse quickened. Who? The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. He walked in with the kind of confidence that didn't belong in a place of justice, slick, precise, and smiling like the devil in a tailored suit. The man from the photograph. The one my father had mentioned in his letter. Amir Rafi. Alive. My breath caught. He's... Yes, Kumar said grimly. Alive and dangerous. He approached the front of the court, every step echoing. His presence was magnetic, calculated. He bowed slightly to the judge, flashing a polished smile. Apologies for my lateness, Your Honor. I've been overseas. The judge frowned. You are? Amir Rafi, financial consultant and, as the records will confirm, a contractual co-beneficiary to the late Mr. Hassan's holdings. Kumar's voice sliced through the tension. That contract was voided before the estate was frozen. Rafi's smile didn't falter. That's what you were told. Sarah turned in her seat. For the first time, I saw something like panic flash across her face. What are you doing here? She hissed. He ignored her. I'm here because my legal rights were violated. And because certain individuals, his eyes flicked toward me, are attempting to bury what's owed to me. The judge sighed. Mr. Rafi, you've been absent for years. Why appear now? Rafi clasped his hands behind his back, every word practiced. Because I was threatened into silence. The Hassan family knew my association with the late Mr. Hassan could expose uncomfortable truths. So they discredited me, seized my accounts, and left me with no choice but to disappear. Lies. Smooth, poisonous lies. But lies told with enough charm to sound like truth. Kumar rose, his voice steady. Your Honor, this man is a proven fraud. He colluded with Ms. Sarah Hassan to access estate funds illegally. Rafi smiled, unbothered. And yet, your client's husband contacted me, several times. All eyes turned to Hamid. Rafi continued, enjoying every word. He wanted information, yes. But also leverage. He offered payment in exchange for silence. I shot up. That's not true. Rafi tilted his head. Isn't it? Would you like me to read the messages? Kumar shouted, objection. There's no verification those messages came from Mr. Hassan. Rafi cut him off. Oh, there's verification. Metadata, timestamps, voice recordings. Should I play one? The judge looked irritated. This is not a circus, Mr. Rafi. He smiled politely. Then I'll simply submit them as evidence. I turned to my husband. What is he talking about? Hamid's expression was unreadable. He's twisting everything. But Rafi's words kept echoing in my head. Voice recordings. Had my husband actually spoken to him more than once? Had he told me the whole truth? The judge motioned for Rafi to sit. You may submit your claim in writing. The court will evaluate its relevance. But the damage was done. The silence between me and Hamid now felt like a wound no one could stitch closed. When recess was called, I followed Kamar into the hall, my steps heavy. "What just happened?" I demanded. "How did he even know we were here?" "He must have been watching the case remotely," Kamar said. "He waited until you were about to win to appear." My hands trembled. "He's working with them." Kamar nodded. "He's always worked with them. But now he's trying to leverage his own survival." I stared at the courtroom doors. "He's not just after money." "No," Kamar said quietly. "He's after control. The same thing your family always wanted." As we prepared to re-enter, a hand caught my arm. Rafi stood there, close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive, sterile. His voice was low, meant only for me. "You've been impressive, Amna," he said softly. "He'd be proud." I froze. "Don't you dare say his name." He smiled faintly. "You look like him when you're angry." I wanted to hit him, scream, something, but his next words cut through everything. "You really don't know, do you?" My breath hitched. "Know what?" He leaned closer, whispering, "Ask your mother who signed the second marriage certificate." "What are you?" But he was already walking away, the echo of his shoes fading down the marble hall. When I returned to my seat, my mind was chaos. Second marriage certificate. Was he implying my father had remarried? Or that someone else had? I looked at my mother, who sat stiffly, refusing to meet my eyes. The judge called us back to order. "We will proceed with closing remarks. Mr. Rafi's claim will be reviewed separately." Rafi sat at the far end of the bench, smirking like he'd already won something invisible. Kamar delivered the final statement with calm authority, reminding the court that my father's verified documents left no ambiguity. But his words were distant now, blurred behind the storm in my head. When the gavel finally fell, it didn't sound like victory, it sounded like warning. The judge's ruling was clear: the trust remained in my control pending final investigation. Sarah and my mother were charged with obstruction and fraud, and Rafi's claim was deferred for independent inquiry. Sarah cried openly. My mother sat pale and still. But none of it felt real. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt like the floor beneath me was starting to crack. As we exited, reporters surrounded us again. "Mrs. Hassan, is it true your father had a secret marriage? Did you know about Amir Rafi's involvement in the estate before this week? Is it true you plan to press criminal charges?" I froze. "What did you say?" I asked the first reporter. "A secret marriage?" He held up his phone, showing a breaking headline. "Leaked document suggests late businessman Hassan Rafi entered private marriage months before death, unknown beneficiary listed." My stomach turned. My father's name. Rafi's name. And one word that shattered everything: beneficiary, Layla. My mother. The world around me blurred. Cameras flashed. Voices blended into white noise. I heard Kamar's voice in the distance. "Amna, don't react. Don't." But I was already walking away. Through the hall, down the steps, into the rain that had started again. Because suddenly, I understood what my father's last warning had meant. My silence won't save you. He hadn't been talking to them. He'd been talking to her. The verdict had been delivered, but the truth wasn't over. Because now I knew what my mother had done wasn't just betrayal. It was marriage. And somewhere in that lie lay the real reason my father died. The news spread like wildfire. By the time I got home, my father's secret marriage was already on every gossip feed, every family group, every news ticker that loved tragedy more than truth. Businessman's hidden union with widow's sister-in-law revealed. Inheritance fraud or family scandal? The Hassan case deepens. They made it sound like entertainment. Like it wasn't my life being carved open in front of strangers. I stood in the living room staring at the TV until the sound turned into static in my head. My husband muted it quietly and turned to me. Amna, he said, soft but firm. You need to breathe. I laughed bitterly. Breathe? My mother married my father's business partner while he was still alive, Hamid. How exactly am I supposed to breathe through that? He didn't answer right away. He just reached for my hands, grounding me. You don't breathe through it, he said. You use it. Later that night, Kamar called. His voice was low, urgent. We're moving into a different war now. If the leaked certificate is authentic, it changes everything. I sank into a chair. Explain. Under inheritance law, he said, a marriage, valid or not, creates legal presumptions. If your mother married your father's partner before his death, and that partner was controlling assets at the time, it's collusion. Possibly even conspiracy to defraud. I gripped the phone tighter. So she married him to legalize the theft. Exactly, he said. They made it look legitimate. He gained control over business accounts through marital proxy. It's brilliant, in a horrifying way. I closed my eyes. Can we prove it? Kamar hesitated. Not yet. But we can trap them. Trap them how? By making them believe we already have proof. If they move to destroy the real records, we'll trace the attempt. I smiled grimly. You're saying we set bait. Precisely. And you'll be the one holding the line. The next day, I went back to the courthouse, not for a hearing, but for war preparation. The marble halls no longer felt intimidating. They felt like tools waiting to be used. We met in Kamar's office, papers spread across his desk like maps of battlefields. He pointed to one document, the supposed marriage certificate. It's dated 3 months before your father's death, he said. Signed in Dammam, notarized under false witnesses. But here's the catch, Rafi wasn't registered under his real name at that time. He was using an alias, Harith Malik. My head snapped up. That's the same name on the offshore accounts. Kamar nodded. Exactly. The HM initials your father left in the trust clues, it wasn't just his own. It was a warning about this. I felt my pulse quicken. My father had known. He'd hidden a clue in plain sight, HM, his name, and his enemies. He was trying to tell me, I whispered. He wanted me to find it. Kamar's expression softened. He knew you'd be the only one who'd look. By afternoon, Kamar's plan was in motion. We leaked word, quietly, strategically, that we had authenticated the marriage certificate and recovered bank records linking it to embezzled assets. Within hours, we saw movement. Sarah's lawyer called Kamar's office twice. Then a third time, pretending it was about mediation. My mother's driver was seen leaving her house at midnight, carrying a briefcase. And a day later, one of Rafi's shell companies suddenly transferred funds to an unknown account in Dubai. The trap was working. That evening, my husband sat across from me at the dining table, studying the files. You realize what happens when this goes public, he said. Your mother could face prison. I looked at him, my voice flat. So could Rafi. So could Sarah. And what about you? He asked quietly. You think the world will see a survivor? Or a woman who destroyed her own family? I stared at the candle between us, the flame trembling. Let them see both. He smiled faintly, pride and pain mixing in his eyes. You've changed. I met his gaze. No. I just stopped apologizing for surviving. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number again. We need to talk. No lawyers. No games. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. at the old villa. Mother. I stared at the words until the glow hurt my eyes. Then I showed the message to Hamid. She's cornered, he said. That means she's dangerous. I have to go, I said. He shook his head. Not alone. Exactly, I said. That's why you're coming. The villa looked smaller than I remembered. My childhood home, the same place where my father's laughter once filled the walls, now felt like a mausoleum for trust. The air smelled of dust and regret. My mother sat in the living room, still elegant, still composed. Her pearls gleamed, but her hands trembled as she lifted her teacup. "You shouldn't have come," she said without looking up. "I had to," I replied. "You wanted this." She set the cup down, eyes sharp. "Stop this madness, Amna. The press, the courts, the humiliation, you've turned our name into ashes." "Our name?" I asked. "You mean his name. The one you signed away to your lover." Her face twitched. "Careful." I leaned forward. "He wasn't just your partner. He was my father's enemy. And you married him while Baba was dying." Her voice rose. "You don't understand, your father was cruel. He left me nothing. He humiliated me for years. He protected what was his," I said. "And you took what wasn't yours." She stood, her composure cracking. "You think you're righteous? You think this case makes you strong? You've become exactly like him, cold, unforgiving." I smiled sadly. "No, Mother. I became everything you pretended to be, powerful enough not to need lies." Her eyes glistened. "He didn't love you the way you think he did." The words hit like a slap. "What did you just say?" She hesitated, then whispered, "He wasn't perfect, Amna. He was hiding something from you too." "Like what?" She swallowed hard. "There's a letter. In his safe. He wrote it weeks before he died. He asked me to destroy it. I couldn't." "Where is it?" Her eyes filled with tears. "If you read it, you'll never forgive him." I stepped closer. "I stopped forgiving people a long time ago. We found the safe exactly where it had always been, behind the bookshelf in my father's old study. The smell of his cologne still lingered, faint but defiant." She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were old contracts, faded photographs, and one sealed envelope addressed to me. The handwriting was my father's. I took it gently, my fingers shaking. "Why didn't you give me this before?" I asked. "Because it changes everything," she said quietly. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. "Amna, if this reaches you, it means the storm has arrived. I need you to know that I tried to protect you from both truth and consequence. There was another heir, one I couldn't acknowledge. The law would destroy everything if I did. But I couldn't let him have nothing." My hands went cold. "Him?" My mother looked away. "A son, Amna. Your father had a son." I staggered back. No, that's not possible." She whispered, "It is. And you've met him." The room tilted. My heart stopped. "Who?" I demanded. "Who is he?" She closed her eyes. "Amir Rafi." The words sliced through me like lightning. Everything blurred, the walls, the air, the years. My father's enemy. My mother's secret partner. The man who tried to steal my inheritance. And my brother. I dropped the letter. It fell to the floor like a verdict. "You knew," I whispered. "You both knew." She nodded, tears spilling freely now. "Your father wanted to help him, but not publicly. He was born before our marriage. If the truth came out, it would destroy the family name. So he kept it secret. But when he died, Amir demanded his share, and I made mistakes trying to contain it." "Mistakes?" I said, my voice breaking. "You married him." She sobbed. "I thought it would protect us." "Protect us? Or protect you?" She didn't answer. My husband moved beside me. "Amna, we have to go." But I couldn't move. My legs were stone. My father's voice echoed in my head, "My silence won't save you." He'd kept it for me. And now it was killing me. I finally spoke. He's not just trying to steal money. He's trying to erase bloodlines. My mother nodded weakly. And now that you know, he won't stop until you're gone. I straightened, my grief turning to fury. Then he'll regret ever being born. As we left the villa, the air felt electric, thick with rain and truth. My husband drove in silence until we reached the main road. I looked out the window, voice hollow. My father's sins became my inheritance. But his enemies just became my mission. My husband glanced at me, eyes filled with both fear and admiration. What are you going to do? I turned toward him. What my father couldn't. He frowned. And what's that? End it. The revelation had rewritten everything, the inheritance, the betrayal, even blood itself. But now I wasn't fighting for justice. I was fighting to erase a brother who wanted to destroy me. When you discover your enemy shares your blood, victory stops feeling like justice. It feels like contamination. I sat in silence for hours after leaving the villa, the letter clutched in my hands. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt drowned. Every breath tasted of betrayal, my father's, my mother's, my own for not seeing it sooner. My husband drove without speaking, one hand on the wheel, the other resting over mine. When he finally broke the silence, his voice was low. You believe it, don't you? I don't want to, I whispered. But everything fits. The money, the secrecy, the timing. He wasn't just my father's partner, he was his mistake. By the time we reached home, it was past midnight. The twins were asleep upstairs. I stood at the window, staring out at the city lights. They looked like stars that had lost their way. Hamid poured me a glass of water. This changes the case. It changes everything. It changes the blood in my veins, I said flatly. And that's worse. He hesitated. Kamar needs to see the letter. I nodded, though the thought made my stomach twist. Tomorrow. I can't face anyone tonight. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Just, give me a minute. He nodded slowly, hurt flickering across his face, then walked away. When the door closed, I sank to the floor and finally let the tears come. I cried for my father, who had died with secrets, for my mother, who had weaponized them, and for myself, for the woman who kept thinking truth would set her free, when all it ever did was burn her alive. Morning brought no mercy. By 8, Kamar was at my doorstep. I handed him the letter. His eyes widened as he read it. Dear God, he whispered. Rafi, your half-brother. I nodded. He's been playing both sides from the beginning. Kamar exhaled slowly. This explains everything, the inheritance sabotage, his claim as co-beneficiary. He's not just after money. He's trying to legitimize himself. How? I asked, voice shaking. By proving paternity, Kamar said grimly. If he can prove he's your father's biological son, he inherits by law, even without being named in the trust. My stomach turned. And he'll do it publicly. Yes, Kamar said. He'll destroy your father's name to rewrite his own. For a moment, the room spun. I saw flashes of every courtroom glare, every betrayal, every whisper that I was unfit. They hadn't just wanted to ruin me, they'd wanted to replace me. Can we stop him? I asked. We can try, Kamar said. But he'll go nuclear. He'll drag your mother into paternity tests, force public records. The only way to stop him is to discredit his motive before he can prove the blood. My throat tightened. And how do we do that? Kamar looked at me for a long moment. By exposing the real crime. He spread new documents across my dining table, photos, ledger scans, receipts. Your father's original trust wasn't just money. It was a protection fund, a financial firewall meant to shield company assets from Rafi's reach. That's why Rafi partnered with your mother. They wanted control, not inheritance. I stared at the numbers. These accounts, they're still active? Yes. Under shell corporations. He's been draining them for years. And the court doesn't know? Kumar smiled grimly. Not yet. But we'll tell them, strategically. How? By leaking just enough, he said. We'll let Rafi think we're planning to expose the affair, not the accounts. He'll panic, move the money, and when he does, we'll have him for fraud and obstruction. I leaned back, dizzy with the audacity of it. You want to bait my brother? Kumar's eyes sharpened. Half-brother, he corrected softly. And yes. I want him desperate. By noon, the plan was set. We arranged a private interview with a journalist known for sniffing scandal. Kumar fed her a carefully worded statement. New revelations suggest the late businessman's partner may have used an illicit marriage to conceal offshore fraud. Within hours, it was trending. That evening, Rafi called. His number flashed on my phone like an omen. I answered. His voice was smooth, almost amused. Well played, little sister. Don't call me that. You prefer opponent? He chuckled. Fine by me. But you should have learned something from our father. You can't fight corruption by playing innocent. I'm not playing, I said. I'm finishing. He laughed softly. You're out of your depth. You think exposing me will restore your father's reputation? He destroyed it himself the day he denied me. You destroyed yourself the moment you tried to erase me. He paused, and when he spoke again, his tone was cold steel. You sound like him. Good, I said. He won. That night, Hamid came to my study. He looked exhausted. You need to rest. I can't, I said. If he's planning to move the money, it'll happen tonight. He hesitated. And if he doesn't? Then he's smarter than we thought, I said. But I doubt it. Pride makes people sloppy. He sat beside me. You're turning into your father. I looked at him, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Maybe that's the only way to beat him. He studied me for a moment, then said quietly, you know what scares me most? What? That when this ends, you won't know how to stop fighting. At 2:17 a.m., Kumar called. They moved, he said. Rafi initiated a transfer from one of the hidden accounts, $3 million to an unregistered holding in Zurich. I sat up. We got him. Not yet, Kumar said. We need the confirmation code. It's routed through his company's secure server. Can you access it? I frowned. How would I? Then I remembered, my father's old office key. The server room was in one of his private subsidiaries, now managed by Rafi's accountant. I can get in, I said. But not legally. Kumar hesitated. You're sure about this? I've never been surer. That night, I returned to my father's old company building. It was eerie walking through halls that once smelled like ambition and perfume, now silent except for the hum of servers. I entered the data room, used the key, and found what I needed, a trail of digital signatures linking the Zurich transfer to a forged marital authorization. He'd used my mother's fake marriage to justify the movement of funds. The proof was right there, time-stamped, traceable, deadly. I downloaded everything. When I turned to leave, a voice spoke from the shadows. I was wondering when you'd come. I froze. Rafi stepped out, his suit immaculate, his smile infuriatingly calm. You're predictable, Amna. Then you should have predicted your downfall. He chuckled. You think a few bank records can ruin me? You forget, I'm family. The same blood runs in your veins. I faced him fully. That's your curse, not my shame. He stepped closer. He never loved you the way he loved me. I felt rage ignite behind my ribs. He didn't love either of us enough to save himself. He smirked. Then maybe we're more alike than you think. Before I could answer, he lunged for the flash drive. I stepped back, and the two of us grappled, papers flying, glass shattering. He wasn't violent like a stranger, he was precise like someone who'd studied me. I struck his arm, the drive slipped, clattering across the floor. He smiled through blood at the corner of his mouth. You don't even know what's on it. I don't need to, I said. The truth burns on its own. He wiped his lip, laughing. You're your father's daughter, all right. Then you know I don't lose. He straightened, smirking. Everyone loses something. Before I could react, he kicked over a nearby cup of water, right onto the open CPU unit. Sparks erupted, the screen went black, and smoke filled the air. You won't find that data again, he said. I held up the drive between my fingers. But I already saved it. For the first time, he looked rattled. Good night, brother, I said. Then I walked out. Back in the car, my hands were shaking, but my resolve was stone. I looked at the flash drive gleaming in the dashboard light. It held not just evidence, but legacy. Hamid looked at me. Did you get it? I nodded. And him. He frowned. What does that mean? It means tomorrow we stop defending and start prosecuting. The next morning, the file would expose everything: fraud, forgery, and bloodline treason. But what I didn't know was that before sunrise, someone else would beat me to the truth, and twist it into another weapon. When dawn came, I wasn't ready for daylight. It felt intrusive, too clean, too merciless for the kind of truth that had just torn through my life. The flash drive with Rafi's transfer sat on my desk like a loaded gun. Proof of fraud. Proof of his blood. Proof of everything my father died trying to keep hidden. I was still staring at it when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. If you release those files, she'll die before morning. I froze. Then I read it again. The words didn't say who she was. But I already knew. My mother. I called Kamar immediately. They're threatening her. He exhaled slowly. Of course they are. You've cornered Rafi. This is his last move, fear. He's not bluffing, I said. You didn't hear what he said at the villa. He doesn't make threats. He makes promises. Kamar's voice softened. Then we make one too. You'll bring me the drive. I'll handle the filing personally. I hesitated. No. I'm going to her first. Amna, he warned, you're walking into his reach. I've been living in it my whole life, I said. I'll call when it's done. And I hung up. The drive to my mother's apartment felt like moving through fog. The streets were washed pale with early sunlight, the world deceptively calm. When I arrived, the doorman looked startled. Mrs. Hassan's been asking for you, he said. She hasn't slept. Neither had I. I took the elevator to the 14th floor. The air grew colder the higher I went. When I reached her door, it was slightly open. Mother? I called. No answer. I stepped inside. The apartment smelled of roses, too many roses. The kind she filled rooms with when she was afraid. She sat by the window, still in her nightgown, staring at the skyline. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were hollow. You came, she said softly. You texted me. Her gaze flicked toward the half-empty glass of wine on the table. I didn't. But I'm glad you did. I frowned. Then who? I know, she said quietly. He's watching. He always is. My chest tightened. Where is he? Her laugh was small, broken. Everywhere I put him. In my choices. My shame. I sat across from her. He's threatening you. I know, she whispered. He called last night. Said if I didn't get you to hand over the drive, he'd make sure I was remembered as the real thief. I clenched my fists. He already made sure of that. Her eyes glistened. You have his eyes, you know. Your father. But you look at me like he never could, like you see what I am. And what are you, mother? I asked. Victim or accomplice? She smiled faintly. both. For a long time, we said nothing. Just the faint hum of the city below and the quiet sound of guilt filling the air. Finally, she spoke again. You were right. About everything. The marriage, the fraud, the affair. I thought I could control him. I thought if I gave him what he wanted, he'd protect me. Protect you from what? She looked at me then, really looked at me. From myself. From the truth about your father's death. My heart stopped. What about his death? Her lip trembled. He didn't die from the heart attack, Amna. He was pushed. The world tilted. What? She shook her head slowly. Not murdered. Not exactly. But that night, the night he died, we fought. I told him I'd sign whatever he wanted, if he'd just stop threatening to expose me and Sarah. But he wouldn't. Tears welled in her eyes. He said he'd rather see everything burn than let Rafi touch his name. He started shouting, clutching his chest. I went to call for help, but Rafi, he stopped me. Said it was too late. Said it would be cleaner if no one knew. Her voice broke. And I listened. I stared at her. My mother, the woman who had taught me to hide my pain behind perfect posture, was confessing that she'd let my father die. Why? I whispered. Because I was weak, she said. Because I was tired of being the villain in his story. I swallowed hard. You became something worse. A sound came from the hallway, a creak, too deliberate to be wind. I turned toward it. Who's there? No answer. I stood up, motioning for her to stay quiet. The sound came again, a shadow moving just beyond the doorframe. I walked toward it slowly. When I yanked the door open, the hallway was empty. Then my phone buzzed. Told you she'd talk. Now come downstairs if you want her to live. I looked at my mother. We have to go. She shook her head. You can't stop him. I'm not going to stop him, I said. I'm going to end him. I dragged her toward the elevator, but she resisted, clutching my arm. Amna, listen to me. He's your brother. Whatever you think you're doing. He stopped being my brother the moment he used you as a shield. We reached the lobby. The morning sunlight spilled across the marble floor. Outside, the street was eerily empty. Then I saw him. Rafi stood beside a black car, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. The same smile. The same arrogance. But his eyes were different this time, harder, colder. Morning, sister, he called. I was worried you'd keep me waiting. Let her go, I said, stepping between them. He raised an eyebrow. Who said I was holding her? I glanced back, my mother's hand still clutched mine, trembling. What do you want, Rafi? He smiled. Closure. The kind you can only get when everything's finished. Hand over the drive, and this ends quietly. Quiet isn't how you end things, I said. It's how you hide them. His smile didn't waver. You think this is about hiding? No, Amna. This is about legacy. Father denied me mine. I'm just taking what I was owed. You were owed nothing, I said. You were a mistake he tried to correct. His expression hardened. And you're his punishment. Before I could react, he pulled something from his coat, a small gun, sleek and silenced. My mother gasped. Rafi, I said, stepping forward. Don't do this. He aimed at the flash drive in my hand. I told you, I don't bluff. The sound was soft, almost delicate, a single suppressed shot. The drive shattered in my hand, fragments scattering across the pavement. Smoke curled in the sunlight. Rafi lowered the gun, calm as ever. There. No more evidence. But what he didn't know, what made my pulse steady even as glass cut into my skin, was that the drive wasn't the only copy. Kamar had one. Safe. Waiting. I met his eyes. You just destroyed your own protection. His smile faltered. What? I backed up everything last night, I said. Emails, ledgers, signatures. Every lie you told. For the first time, he looked afraid. You think you've won, he hissed. But if I fall, I'll take her with me. I turned to my mother. Then tell him, Mother. Tell him it's over. Her lips parted. Rafi, please. He stepped back, shaking his head. You were supposed to love me. And then he was gone, into the car, the door slamming, tires screeching as he disappeared into the city that had given him both birth and purpose. My mother sank to the ground, sobbing. I crouched beside her, my hand on her shoulder. It's over, I said softly. But she shook her head. No, Amna. It never is. Not when blood is involved. I looked at the broken pieces of the flash drive glittering on the asphalt. She was right. This wasn't over. Not until I made sure every secret he'd ever weaponized was exposed in daylight. That evening, Kamar called again. He's vanished, he said. Interpol flagged a border alert. He's gone underground. Good, I said. Let him run. And your mother? She confessed enough, I said. But not everything. Not yet. Kamar hesitated. There's a warrant for his arrest. Once he's found, it'll all be public. I closed my eyes, finally feeling something like relief. Then the world will know what it cost to be a Hassan. I hung up and walked to the window. The city lights flickered like broken stars. My reflection stared back, older, colder, but free. I whispered to it, you were right, Baba. Silence doesn't save. It only delays the scream. And tonight, I wasn't delaying anything. Cliffhanger. Rafi was gone, but his threat wasn't. Because the next morning, a sealed envelope arrived at my door, stamped with his name, written in my father's handwriting. Type yes to continue to Chapter 6, Part 1. You said. Yes. ChatGPT said. Chapter 6, Part 1, The Letter That Should Have Died With Him. Word count, 1,633. The envelope lay on my doorstep like an accusation. Plain, cream-colored, unmarked, except for one thing. In the corner, scrawled in my father's handwriting, was a name I'd stopped expecting to see again. Amir. The irony was suffocating. My father had written my half-brother's name on a letter that had somehow reached me years after both men should have been dust. I picked it up with shaking hands. The paper felt too warm, as if it had been carried recently. Someone had delivered this today. No postage. No address. Just, placed. I looked around. The street was empty, the early morning sky bruised with gray. Whoever had left it was long gone. Or watching. Hamid appeared in the doorway behind me. You're trembling. Someone left this, I said. It's my father's writing. He frowned. That's impossible. I tore the envelope open before I could lose courage. Inside was a folded letter and a single photograph, black and white, worn around the edges. My father. Younger. Standing beside another man. Amir. I almost dropped it. They looked alike, too alike. Same eyes, same crooked half-smile. But my father's expression was different. Proud. Not ashamed. I read the letter. If this ever reaches you, my children, it means the truth has caught up faster than mercy. I leave this not for forgiveness, but for understanding. What you will learn soon is not a lie, it is unfinished truth. My pulse quickened. My children. Not Amna. Not Amir. Both. Amir was born of circumstance, not betrayal. I made a choice once that saved a life and destroyed a family. If you find this letter, you will also find the key I left with Idris Kamar. It opens a deposit box that contains what truly matters, not money, but confession. The letter ended abruptly, no signature, just a smear of ink. A confession. A key. And another secret. I handed the letter to Hamid. His face hardened as he read. This isn't his handwriting alone. Look, see that annotation? He pointed to a note scribbled in the corner, newer, written in blue ink. You're too late, sister. I already have the key. Rafi. I felt cold all over. He's taunting me. Hamid looked at me, his voice steady. Or inviting you. By mid-morning, Kamar arrived. His expression was grim but unsurprised. I suspected something like this existed, he said. Your father told me, once, that there were 2 children, 1 debt. I thought it was metaphor. Where's the deposit box? I asked. He hesitated. At the Central Trust Bank. Under a dormant account. I kept it sealed because your father left instructions, not to open unless both heirs were present. Both heirs, I repeated. Meaning me and Rafi. He nodded. Which means if he already has the key, he can open it any time. Then we have to get there first. Impossible, he said. Access requires both biometric signatures. I stared at him. Then we make sure he needs mine. We reached the bank by noon. A fortress of glass and gold. Too pristine to hold ghosts. The manager led us to a lower floor, rows of private boxes behind steel doors. Kamar handled the documents, his voice clipped and professional. Box 307. Registered under Hassan M. Rafi. When the door slid open, the metal gleamed with antiseptic cold. Inside the room, there was only one box, sealed with a digital lock and a fingerprint panel. Kamar entered the override code. The screen blinked. Awaiting second verification. He sighed. As expected. We can't access it without Rafi. Unless we bring his fingerprint another way, Hamid said quietly. We both turned to him. He held up a folder. Inside were copies of Rafi's corporate filings. Biometric scans, his thumbprint from the company's registration documents. If we simulate the print with polymer gel. I interrupted, you can forge it? He met my eyes. I can try. By evening, my house looked like a crime lab. Kamar supervised from the kitchen table while Hamid poured the polymer gel into a mold lined with the printed scan. It has to be exact, Kamar warned. One bubble, one smudge, it'll fail. I know, Hamid said. I've done this before. I frowned. Before? He didn't look up. In my old job. Before we met. It hit me then, how little I truly knew about his past. And how much of it had been survival. When the mold hardened, he peeled it off and pressed it to the digital sensor of a test lock. The screen flickered green. He smiled faintly. It'll work. I exhaled. Then tomorrow we open it. That night, sleep refused to come. I sat by the window, staring at the city's reflection in my father's old letter. Amir was born of circumstance, not betrayal. What did that even mean? Was my father saying he'd been forced into it? Or that love had cost him loyalty? Somewhere between his silence and my mother's deceit, the truth had been twisted so many times it no longer looked like truth at all. For the first time, I wondered if maybe everyone in this family, including me, had become exactly what they accused each other of being. At dawn, we returned to the bank. The hallways were quiet, echoing with the hum of security lights. The manager unlocked the chamber for us again, eyes wary. Kamar stood guard by the door as Hamid positioned the fake print on the scanner. Ready? He asked. I nodded. He pressed it down. The machine beeped once. Then again. Green light. The lock clicked open. Inside was a black box, smaller than a briefcase. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside lay 2 things. A flash drive sealed in wax. And a folded document stamped confidential, Rafi Holdings. My heart pounded. What is this? Kamar scanned the document first. His face darkened as he read. It's a contract. Between your father and Rafi. A contract? He nodded grimly. He gave Rafi half the company. I stared at him, numb. No. That can't be right. It's real, Kamar said. Your father signed it 2 months before his death. It declares Amir Rafi as a co-founder of the Hassan Group. The air left my lungs. He legitimized him. Hamid's voice was quiet. That means. I know what it means, I said. It means everything I've been fighting for might already belong to him. I grabbed the flash drive, breaking the wax seal. Maybe this explains why. Kamar inserted it into his laptop. The screen filled with lines of encrypted data, then a video window opened. My father's face appeared, older, weary, recorded in his study. If you're watching this, he said, it means the truth has been weaponized again. You both deserve to know what I couldn't say in life. He paused, breathing heavily. Amir, I gave you half not because you earned it, but because you wouldn't survive without it. And Amna, I left you the trust because you were the only one who understood responsibility. Together, you balance what I broke. He looked directly into the camera, eyes heavy with something that wasn't quite guilt or love, just exhaustion. If you fight each other, you'll destroy what's left of me. But if you unite, you'll destroy the ones who used us all. The video ended. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the lights. Kamar whispered, he wanted you to work together. I closed my eyes. He wanted the impossible. We left the bank in silence. Outside, the sun had turned sharp, unforgiving. Hamid touched my shoulder. What now? Now? I said, slipping the drive into my coat pocket. We make sure Rafi never gets to pretend he's my father's heir again. Kamar frowned. He is legally, Amna. That video. Then we'll rewrite the law, I said. The way he rewrote my life. I started walking toward the car, adrenaline drowning grief. Behind me, Kamar sighed. He didn't raise a daughter, did he? Hamid answered quietly. No. He raised a storm. That night, another message arrived. No threats this time. No riddles. Just a photo. Rafi. Standing in front of my father's grave. Holding a single white rose. The caption read. He chose both of us. You chose war. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about legacy. And only one of us was going to walk away carrying it. The letter had rewritten history, the video had rewritten blood, and now Rafi was rewriting grief. The final chapter wouldn't be about who inherited the empire, but who survived it. Grief has a strange smell. It isn't just flowers or rain, it's paper. Old paper. Burnt paper. The kind that hides secrets under ink and dust. That morning, the scent filled my house. Kamar had laid the documents across my living room floor, the contract, the letter, the remnants of my father's last confession. The weight of them was heavier than any inheritance. He stood by the window, arms folded. The court will reopen the case once they see this, he said. Rafi's claim to legitimacy will complicate things. Complicate? I snapped. He's claiming half of my father's soul. Kamar's expression softened. Your father tried to atone, Amna. He didn't mean to divide you. I laughed bitterly. He didn't mean to divide us, but he left a will written like a chessboard. Hamid, seated beside me, said nothing. He hadn't spoken much since we opened that box. There was something in his silence, fear, maybe. Or guilt. Where is Rafi now? I asked. Kamar sighed. He's still in the city. He wants a meeting. I looked up sharply. A meeting? Yes. He contacted my office last night. Said he wants to end this before the past ends us. His words. Hamid shook his head. It's a trap. I nodded. Good. I'm done being the one caught in them. The meeting was set for noon, at an abandoned estate on the outskirts of Dammam, one of our family's old warehouses, now a hollow monument to ambition. I chose not to bring police or guards. Rafi wouldn't come if he smelled protection. Kamar insisted on driving. Hamid followed in a second car. The road stretched long and empty, lined with half-built structures and fading billboards. The air tasted of dust and memory. When we arrived, the gates were open. Inside, the silence was so heavy it felt like sound itself had been exiled. Rafi was already there. He stood in the center of the hall, sunlight streaming through broken glass, dust swirling around him like smoke. He looked calm, too calm. Always on time, he said, smiling faintly. You get that from him. Stop talking like you knew him better, I said. I didn't, he admitted. But I understood him. Then you should understand why he never wanted you near us. His smile deepened. Oh, he wanted me near. He just didn't want me visible. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, another letter, folded and aged. He tossed it onto the table between us. He wrote too, he said. Yours wasn't the only version. I stared at it. You're lying. Read it. The handwriting was the same. The ink, the weight of the paper, all identical. But the words, God, the words, were different. Amir, my son. You must understand that truth isn't always justice. Amna carries my name, but you carry my sins. Together, you complete what I destroyed. Don't hate her for being chosen. She was given burden, not privilege. When the time comes, protect her from the same greed that poisoned me. My throat tightened. This changes everything. Rafi smiled. Does it? He stepped closer. He didn't hate me, Amna. He pitied me. And he didn't love you the way you think. He built both of us into his redemption. That's what men like him do, they use love as penance. I met his gaze, voice trembling. You think pity is love? He shrugged. It's more than you ever gave me. Before I could respond, the doors opened behind us. My mother walked in. She looked pale, frail even, her face a map of exhaustion. Enough, she said. Both of you. Rafi turned, smirking. How poetic. The queen arrives. I should have ended this years ago, she whispered. He laughed softly. And lose your favorite mask? You loved being the martyr. She stepped closer, her hands trembling. I loved your father. Not the lies you forced me to tell. Lies, he mocked. You married me, remember? That wasn't my lie. She flinched. I married a shadow. He leaned in, voice low. Then why did you stay? I couldn't take it anymore. Enough. I shouted. You both turned him into a weapon. He's dead, and you're still feeding on him. Rafi turned to me. Don't pretend you're above it. You're here for vengeance, not closure. You're wrong, I said. I'm here to finish what he started. He smirked. Then finish it. He tossed another envelope onto the table. This one was marked with a court seal. What is that? I asked. His death certificate, Rafi said. Signed and falsified by your mother. My blood ran cold. What? He smiled darkly. He didn't die that night, Amna. He lived for 2 more days. Long enough to change everything. Long enough to sign the contract naming me his successor. But the document was buried under a fraudulent death record. Ask her. I turned to my mother. Is it true? Tears streamed down her face. He was suffering. He begged me to let him go. He couldn't breathe, Amna. He couldn't. You falsified his death? I whispered. She nodded weakly. To stop the investigation. To stop the scandal. Rafi's voice was sharp. To stop me. The room spun. Every truth I thought I'd uncovered was just another layer of deceit. You let me believe he died in peace, I said. You let me hate you for it. Her voice broke. Because you needed to. Rafi laughed bitterly. This family deserves extinction. I looked at him, and in that moment, I saw not my brother but a mirror, reflecting the same pain, the same hunger to end it all. No, I said quietly. We deserve the truth. I reached for the certificate. The ink was real. The signatures matched. The falsification, perfect. But something was wrong. The witness signature at the bottom. Hamid's name. My world tilted. I looked up. What is this? Rafi's smile returned. You should ask your husband. Hamid stepped out of the shadows near the doorway, his face pale. Amna. Tell me it's not true, I said. He hesitated. It's complicated. Complicated? I whispered. You witnessed my father's death? He exhaled. I didn't know who he was. I was working at the hospital under an alias. They brought him in, heart failure, high security. Your mother paid me to handle the paperwork. I thought I was helping. You falsified the certificate, I said. You made it legal. I didn't know it was him. His voice cracked. By the time I realized, it was too late. Rafi's laughter filled the room. What a beautiful tragedy. The man who saved you helped kill your father's truth. I turned on him. And you exploited it. He shrugged. That's what I do. Something inside me broke, quietly, cleanly. Rage didn't feel hot anymore. It felt cold. I stepped closer to him. You think this gives you power? He leaned in, smiling. It gives me everything. No, I whispered. It gives me nothing to lose. And I grabbed the certificate from the table and tore it in half. Rafi's smile vanished. What are you doing? Ending the document, I said. Not the truth. You want war? Fine. But I fight on my terms now. I turned to my mother. You'll testify. You'll tell them everything. She nodded through her tears. Yes. Rafi stepped forward, desperate now. You think they'll believe her? She's perjured half her life. I met his gaze, calm. Then I'll make them believe me. He laughed once, harsh and hollow. You think you've won because you're louder? No, I said. Because you're tired. He froze. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You've been fighting for his love your whole life, Rafi. But he gave you something worse, his reflection. You can't kill what you already are. His eyes flickered, fury and fear warring behind them. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe, I whispered. But you'll remember it. Kamar appeared in the doorway, security behind him. Enough, he said. This ends today. Rafi didn't move. He just looked at me one last time and smiled that same eerie smile. You're more like him than you'll ever admit. Then he turned, hands raised, as the guards moved in. The silence that followed was heavy, final. My mother collapsed into a chair, weeping. Hamid stood apart, guilt written across his face. And me, I just stood there, staring at the torn pieces of the certificate on the floor. For the first time, I didn't feel like I'd won anything. Just inherited what everyone before me had broken. That night, I watched the news. Amir Rafi in custody pending charges of fraud and obstruction in Hassan estate case. The anchor's voice faded into static as I turned off the TV. Justice looked a lot like loneliness. Rafi was finally in custody, but the story wasn't over, because 2 days later, the footage of my father's last living conversation leaked online. And what he said would destroy everything I thought I'd avenged. The first message came at dawn. A single link, no text. From an untraceable number. At first, I thought it was another one of Rafi's psychological games, one last act of manipulation from his cell. But when I tapped the link and the video began to play, I forgot how to breathe. It was my father. Alive. Moving. Speaking. The timestamp in the corner read, 2 days after his death. He was in a hospital bed, pale but conscious, his oxygen mask half lowered. A voice behind the camera said softly, "Sir, should I start recording?" My father nodded. Then he began to speak. If this is being watched, it means the truth was buried again. Maybe by the ones I loved. Maybe by the ones I feared. Maybe both. I gripped the phone tighter. The background was sterile, hospital white. His voice, though weak, carried that familiar weight, a man used to commanding even when the world was collapsing around him. I signed the documents. I legitimized Amir because he deserved a name, not because he deserved power. And I left Amna the trust because she was the only one who understood the burden of silence. He coughed, the sound ragged, painful. If they ever tell you I died that night, know this, I stayed alive long enough to fix what my mistakes broke. I changed the contract. My heart stopped. Changed the contract. He continued, struggling for breath. The final version is stored with Idris Kamar. Only he knows the code. When it's opened, the world will see who truly inherited my empire, and why. The nurse's voice came through faintly. "Sir, please rest." He shook his head. "I won't rest until my name means something again." Then, softer. "If Amna finds this first, tell her I'm sorry for teaching her to be quiet. Tell her her voice is the only thing worth inheriting." The video cut to static. I sat frozen. The room seemed to tilt, the sound of my own heartbeat louder than thought. He'd changed the contract. Everything, the will, the trust, the shares, the empire, none of it was final. None of it was what we thought. And Kamar. Kamar had known. I called him immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Amna? You lied to me." His voice was calm. "No. I protected you." "Protected me from what?" I demanded. "You had the final contract this whole time." He sighed. "Your father made me promise not to reveal it until both heirs were accounted for, and until the fraud was exposed. That condition was only met yesterday." I swallowed hard. "So what does it say?" A pause. Then, "Come to my office. You need to see it yourself." When I arrived, Kamar already had the document on his desk, an original, not a copy. The paper was thick, official, sealed with the same ink as my father's old directives. He slid it across the table toward me. "Read." My eyes scanned the text, the legal jargon blurring together until the words that mattered came into focus. In the event that either heir acts in deception or uses blood as weapon, all assets, trusts, and holdings shall be transferred to the third name listed herein. Third name? I looked up. Who? Kamar hesitated. Keep reading. I did. Executor of legacy, Hamid Faris Hassan. My husband. The room spun. This is a mistake, I said, shaking my head. He couldn't have. Kamar's face was unreadable. It's authentic. Verified by the same ink and seal as every other document. But Hamid wasn't even in his life then. He didn't know him. Kamar's gaze softened. Are you sure? I blinked. What do you mean? He folded his hands. Your husband wasn't a stranger to your father, Amna. He worked under him years ago, quietly, under an alias. Your father trusted him long before you ever met. My voice broke. No. Kamar nodded. He was your father's insurance. His witness. His safeguard. I stumbled back, my mind fracturing under the weight of revelation. Hamid, my husband, my anchor, had known my father. Had worked for him. Had been placed in my life, all along. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Kamar's expression hardened. Because he swore me to silence until you could handle the truth. I don't want his protection. I cried. I wanted honesty. He sighed. Sometimes they're the same thing. That night, I confronted Hamid. He was in the study, the flash drive from Rafi's case glowing on the desk beside him. He didn't look surprised when I walked in. You saw the footage, he said simply. How long have you known? He exhaled slowly. Since before we married. I felt my heart collapse. He sent you to me. Hamid looked at me, pain flickering behind his eyes. He didn't send me. He told me to look out for you if everything fell apart. And it did. So you've been what, my keeper? My father's shadow? No, he said softly. Your equal. Your partner. The only one he trusted not to choose sides. I laughed bitterly. And yet here we are, on opposite ends of a battlefield he built. He stepped closer. I didn't want this to happen. But if he trusted anyone to finish what he started, it's us. I stared at him, my voice low. He made you the heir. He nodded once. In title. Not in blood. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to fight for yourself first, he said. You needed to prove you weren't your family's victim. And now? I whispered. Now, he said, we fight for him. The next morning, the headlines changed again. Court confirms new executor in Hassan estate, Hamid Faris named successor. Fraud case expands, Rafi's appeal denied as new inheritance evidence emerges. The media called it the Hassan resurrection. I called it irony. I was finally free of my sister's lies, my mother's control, my brother's vengeance, only to realize my husband had been the one holding the final thread all along. When we went to court for the last hearing, the room felt like a theater. Rafi, in cuffs, glared from the defendant's bench. My mother sat pale and silent. Kamar stood by the judge, presenting the video and the final contract. Hamid and I stood side by side. Partners in truth, strangers in everything else. The judge spoke. Based on this new evidence, the court recognizes Mr. Hamid Faris Hassan as the legal executor and majority heir of the Hassan estate. Rafi laughed bitterly. So the watchdog inherits the kennel. The judge silenced him with a glare. When the gavel fell, the sound didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion. Outside, the press swarmed us again. Mrs. Hassan, how does it feel to lose the title to your husband? Is this justice or betrayal? Do you still believe your father wanted you to lead? I said nothing. Just smiled the kind of smile that hides a war behind it. Because what none of them knew, what not even Hamid knew, was that my father had left one last message on that video. A final line I hadn't shared. If the world crowns a man in my place, remember, Amna, crowns fall heavier when they're stolen. That night, when Hamid came to me, I was standing at the window, watching the city that had eaten my childhood. Say it, he said quietly. Say what you're thinking. I turned to him. You inherited his empire. But I inherited his will. He smiled faintly. Then we build something better. I looked at him, the man who'd loved me, lied to me, and saved me all at once. Or we burn it down. His smile faded. You sound like him. No, I said. I sound like me. As he left the room, my phone buzzed once more. Another message. Another link. No text, just a title. The Last Testament of Hassan M. Rafi. And below it, a single line. For my daughter only. The final recording waited, promising answers, or ruin. And I knew that when I pressed play, it would either set me free or prove that every battle I'd fought was for nothing. I stopped protecting people who never protected me. The courtroom is silent when I sign the final document, the the one that restores the trust, unfreezes the estate, and rewrites every lie they told about me. The pen doesn't tremble this time. My hand is steady, my name inked with the weight of every wound they gave me and every truth I learned to speak out loud. For years, they called me emotional, dramatic, unstable. But standing here now, I realize emotion was never my weakness. It was my evidence. I authorize the next legal step, pressing charges where the evidence demands it. Fraud. Perjury. Falsification. I don't hesitate. Justice isn't revenge, it's record-keeping. When I walk out of the courthouse, the press is waiting, the cameras flashing like lightning, the same way they did when they thought I was broken. But this time I don't look away. I hold my twins' hands, one in each palm, and feel their tiny fingers grip tighter, like they already know their mother just ended a cycle older than any of us. My husband walks beside me, no longer the keeper of secrets, but the partner of someone who's finally free to choose truth over peace. My mother's tears no longer move me. My sister's rage no longer scares me. Their power was always borrowed, from my silence, from my guilt, from the version of me they built and needed me to believe in. That version is gone. The trust is restored. The assets secured. The public record finally reflects what they tried to bury. I was never the problem. I was the proof. The reporters shout questions, asking if I'll ever reconcile, if I'll ever forgive. I smile. Forgiveness isn't something I owe to people who built their peace on my pain. Forgiveness is for the living, and they stopped being alive to me a long time ago. As I step into the sunlight, I feel something uncoil inside me. It isn't triumph, it's release. I look back one last time, not to remember, but to recognize how far I've come. The final scene isn't about revenge or wealth or bloodlines, it's about reclamation. About knowing that love doesn't beg for a seat at the table. It builds a new one. And this time I'm not sitting quietly. I'm leading. My father's words echo like a benediction. Silence doesn't save, Amna, it only delays the scream. I finally understand. Because my story didn't end in the courtroom. It ended in the moment I realized that truth doesn't need inheritance, it needs courage. Would you have forgiven them after what they did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for the next story.